Hello there, and welcome to the HistSleep channel. Tonight, we begin a journey into a world that exists in the quiet spaces between the marble columns of history. We're going back to a time when the night wasn't just a period of rest, but a sanctuary for a young girl who would one day belong to the world, but for now, belonged only to the shadows of an ancient English estate. Before we dive into the dim light of the Spencer family's history, I would love it if you just take a moment to subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. It really helps these stories reach those who need a bit of quiet in a loud world. And I'm curious, where are you right now? And when are you listening? Are you tucked away in bed, or perhaps watching the rain against a window in the American night? Let me know in the comments. I read them all, and they mean a lot to me. Now, settle in. Let's talk about Althorp. The air inside Althorp House is different from the air outside. It is heavy, thick with the scent of beeswax, old parchment, and the cold, lingering breath of 500 years of history. Imagine the rolling hills of Northamptonshire, shrouded in a thin, silver mist as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The great house stands like a silent sentinel, its red bricks darkened by time, its windows reflecting the gray, English sky. Inside, the silence is not empty. It is a living thing. It lives in the high ceilings and the vast, echoing staircases. For a young girl named Diana, these halls were not a palace of grandeur, but a labyrinth of solitude. She walks softly, her footsteps muffled by the heavy, ornate rugs that have felt the weight of Spencers for generations. Every floorboard has a story, every creak is an echo of a cousin, a grandfather, or a queen who once walked these same paths. The walls are lined with gold-framed portraits, ancestors with pale faces and dark eyes, their gazes following her as she moves through the shadows. They are the guardians of the family legacy, and their presence is a constant, silent pressure on the shoulders of a child. Diana reaches the great staircase, the heart of the house. The oak is dark and polished to a mirror shine, cool to the touch. She rests her hand on the banister, feeling the grain of the wood. To an American observer, this house might seem like a museum, but to her, it was a landscape of memory. She remembers the sound of her parents' voices echoing in the marble hall below, sounds that grew sharper, then quieter, until one day, the house felt larger than it ever had before. The separation of her parents left a void in these rooms, a void that the heavy furniture and grand tapestries could never quite fill. She spends her afternoons in the library, where the light filters through the tall windows in long, dusty shafts. The books are bound in leather, their spines cracked and gold-leafed. She doesn't always read them, sometimes she just sits, listening to the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Tick-tock, tick-tock. A steady, hypnotic beat that counts the seconds of a girlhood spent in waiting. She wanders into the picture gallery, a room 100 feet long, filled with the faces of the past. There is a particular stillness here. The dust motes dance in the dying light, swirling in slow, invisible currents. She looks at the portraits of women who came before her, women who wore the same Spencer pearls, who sat in the same gardens, who perhaps felt the same quiet ache of being part of something so much larger than themselves. The house is a fortress of tradition. The servants move like ghosts in the background, the silver is polished until it glows like moonlight, the gardens are manicured with mathematical precision. But beneath the order, there is a sense of melancholy. Diana finds comfort in the small things, the soft fur of her pet guinea pig, the way the grass feels against her feet in the secret corners of the parkland, the smell of the kitchen in the early morning before the house fully wakes. As the night deepens at Althorp, the shadows grow long and soft. The fire in the hearth flickers, casting orange light across the stone floors. Diana retreats to her bedroom, a space that feels slightly more her own, yet still tied to the ancestral rhythm. She pulls the heavy curtains shut, blocking out the vastness of the estate. Outside, the owls call to one another in the ancient oaks, and the wind whispers through the hedgerows. In the quiet of her room, she is just Diana. Not a Spencer, not a future princess, just a young girl dreaming of a life that feels warm and close and real. She listens to the house settle, the wood contracting as it cools, the distant chime of a bell, the muffled sound of the wind in the chimney. This was the beginning. The foundation of a life built on grand stages and public gazes was laid here, in the quiet, lonely halls of a house that held too many secrets and not enough warmth. The silence of Althorp taught her how to be still, how to observe, and how to find a world within herself when the world outside felt too cold to touch. The moon rises over the Northamptonshire countryside, casting a pale glow over the silent house. The portraits remain on the walls, watching over the sleeping girl. The history of the Spencers continues its slow, inevitable march, and Diana, for now, is safe in the quiet, lost in the gentle embrace of sleep. The year is 1977. And the season is shifting. The air in Northamptonshire has turned crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sharp, metallic tang of an approaching winter. Althorp is no longer just a silent house. Today, the grounds are alive with the muffled sounds of a hunting party, the distant bark of dogs, the soft thud of horse hooves on the soft, mossy ground. Diana is 16 now. She is no longer the small child lost in the corridors, but she still carries that same quietude, that same preference for the edges of things. While the adults gather with their flasks and their loud laughter, she finds herself drawn away from the noise, toward the dense, ancient woods that border the Spencer estate. The woods are a cathedral of oak and beech trees, their branches interlacing high above to create a ceiling of gold and deep brown. As she steps off the manicured lawn and onto the forest floor, the sound of the world begins to fade. The crunch of dry twigs under her boots is the only rhythm. Crack, crunch, silence. The mist hangs low today, clinging to the trunks of the trees like a ghostly veil. It softens the light, turning the afternoon into a perpetual twilight. Diana moves through the trees with a natural grace, her coat buttoned tight against the chill. She isn't looking for anyone. She is looking for the stillness. For the American listener, imagine the profound quiet of a forest that has seen centuries pass, where every stone and every root feels heavy with the weight of time. In the distance, a figure appears through the fog. At first, he is just a silhouette, a dark shape against the gray-green backdrop of the trees. He is leaning against a wooden fence near a plowed field, looking out over the land. He is not a stranger, yet he is the greatest stranger of all. It is Prince Charles. He looks different here, away from the gold braid and the cameras. He looks like a man carrying a heavy burden, his shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes fixed on something far away. As Diana approaches, the silence between them feels thick, like the mist itself. The prince turns, and for the first time, his gaze lands on the young Sarah Spencer's younger sister. He sees a girl with a shy, tilted head, eyes peeking through a fringe of blonde hair, a girl who looks like she belongs to the woods more than the drawing rooms. What a very jolly 16-year-old, he would later say, but in this moment, there are no interviews, no headlines, only the sound of the wind sighing through the bare branches. They begin to walk. Not toward the house, but deeper into the perimeter of the forest. Their boots sink into the mud, leaving twin trails in the soft earth. Charles speaks of the land, of the trees, of the history of the Spencers. His voice is a low, cultured murmur, a sound that blends perfectly with the rustle of the leaves. Diana listens, more than she speaks. She has learned the art of listening in the long halls of Althorp, and she provides him with something he rarely finds, a quiet, undemanding presence. The air grows colder as the sun sinks lower behind the clouds. They stop by a small stream, the water tea-colored and rushing over smooth, black stones. Bubbling, gurgling, the sound of the water is hypnotic. Diana watches the way the light catches the ripples. She feels a strange shift in the atmosphere, a sense that the world is tilting on its axis. This is not a fairy tale meeting, it is a collision of two lonely paths in a cold woodland. Charles describes the pressures of his world, the constant expectations, the duty that acts as a cage. For a moment, the Prince of Wales is just a man in a Barber jacket, seeking a moment of peace. And Diana, she is the mirror reflecting that peace back to him. She doesn't see the crown yet, she sees the sadness in his eyes, a sadness she recognizes from her own reflections in the mirrors of Althorp. The woods seem to lean in, listening to their conversation. The ancient oaks, some of them planted when the first Spencer arrived, stand as silent witnesses to this encounter. If they could speak, would they warn her? Would they tell her to turn back toward the safety of her youth? But the trees remain silent. They only drop their leaves, one by one, swirling down to join the others on the ground. As they walk back toward the house, the lights of Althorp begin to twinkle in the distance, warm yellow squares against the darkening blue of the evening. The reality of their positions begins to return. The hunting party is returning, the smell of wood smoke drifts from the chimneys, the spell of the woods is breaking. But something has changed. The jolly 16-year-old has left an impression. A seed has been planted in the damp soil of the estate, a seed that will grow into a story that will eventually consume them both. Diana feels a flicker of something new, an excitement that scares her, a warmth that lingers even as the frost begins to form on the grass. They reach the edge of the trees. Charles bids her a polite farewell, his breath visible in the cold air. He moves toward the house, toward the duty, toward the future. Diana remains at the tree line for a moment longer. She looks back into the dark woods, where the mist has now swallowed the path they walked. The silence returns, but it is different now. It is no longer the silence of solitude, it is the silence of anticipation. The woods hold their breath. The night settles over Northamptonshire, heavy and still. The owls begin their hunt, their cries echoing across the fields. Tonight, as you listen, imagine that damp, cold forest. Feel the chill on your skin, hear the distant rushing of the stream, and the soft, rhythmic sound of two people walking through the leaves. The world is vast, and history is often made in these small, quiet corners, away from the lights, in the shadow of the trees. The year is now 1980, and the grand, echoing corridors of Althorp have been replaced by the bustling, rain-slicked streets of London. We find ourselves in a quiet corner of the city called Pimlico, a place where the architecture is elegant but lived in, where the morning air smells of damp pavement and fresh coffee from the nearby cafes. Diana is 19 years old now, and she is living a life that is, perhaps, the most normal she will ever know. Imagine a small, sun-drenched apartment in Coleherne Court, shared with 3 other girls. The rooms are filled with the soft clutter of young adulthood, tea mugs left on side tables, the scent of floral perfume hanging in the hallway, and the constant, gentle hum of a London morning filtering through the window panes. Every morning, Diana leaves this sanctuary and makes her way to the Young England kindergarten. The walk is rhythmic, a steady pace through the neighborhood. Her boots click softly on the pavement, a sound that blends with the distant rumble of the red double-decker buses. For the American listener, imagine the crispness of a London autumn morning, the way the sunlight struggles to break through the gray clouds, casting a soft, pearlescent glow over the brick buildings. She reaches the kindergarten, a place of primary colors and innocent laughter. As she turns the key in the lock, the quiet of the empty classroom greets her. There is a specific smell to this place, a mixture of wax crayons, finger paint, and the faint, sweet scent of apple juice. It is a world far removed from the cold marble of Althorp or the rigid protocols of the royal court. Diana moves through the room, setting out the day's activities. She smooths the paper on the small wooden tables, she organizes the jars of brushes, she adjusts the tiny chairs. Every movement is slow and deliberate. There is a peace in this routine, a sense of purpose that she has chosen for herself. In these moments, she is not a Spencer, she is simply Miss Diana. Soon, the silence is broken by the sound of small feet. The children arrive, a whirlwind of bright coats and tangled scarves. Diana kneels down to their level, her long skirts sweeping the floor. She listens to their stories about a lost toy, a new puppy, or a dream they had the night before. She has a gift for this, a way of making every child feel like the center of the universe. Her voice is a soft murmur, a gentle guiding force in their small lives. As the morning progresses, the classroom becomes a tapestry of sensory details. The sound of scissors snipping through construction paper, the wet, squelching noise of clay being molded by small hands, the rhythmic scratching of crayons on paper. Outside, the world is beginning to take notice of her, but inside these walls, the only thing that matters is the puzzle that needs solving or the story that needs to be read. The sunlight shifts across the floor, moving in slow squares of warmth. Diana sits in a circle with the children, a book resting on her knees. She turns the pages slowly, the paper making a crisp, satisfying sound. The children lean in, their eyes wide, lost in the world of the story. In this circle, Diana finds a warmth she often lacked in her own childhood. She is creating the sanctuary for them that she always craved for herself. Lunchtime brings a different energy. The clatter of plastic plates, the smell of warm bread, the soft chatter of voices. Diana moves between the tables, pouring milk, wiping faces, offering a quiet word of encouragement. There is no pretense here. No cameras, no reporters, no expectations of royalty. Just the simple, beautiful, boring reality of a working life. But even here, in the quiet streets of Pimlico, the shadows of the future are beginning to lengthen. Sometimes, as she walks home, she notices a car following too closely. A flash of a lens in the distance. A stranger lingering near her front door. The normalcy is beginning to fray at the edges. The media storm is gathering, a dark cloud on the horizon of her quiet London life. She returns to her apartment in the evening, tired but content. She kicks off her shoes and makes a pot of tea. The steam rises in a slow, swirling column, catching the light of the lamp. She sits by the window, watching the rain begin to fall over London. The city is a sea of flickering lights, each one a story, each one a life. She wonders how much longer she can remain just another face in the crowd. The transition from the kindergarten teacher to the future princess is happening in the quiet spaces between her breaths. The phone rings more often now. The invitations are more frequent. The name Charles is whispered in every conversation. But tonight, she is still Miss Diana. She is still the girl who loves the smell of crayons and the sound of children's laughter. As you listen to the sound of my voice, imagine the stillness of that London apartment. The way the shadows move across the wall, the distant sound of a siren, the hum of the refrigerator. These are the sounds of her last days of freedom. A time of innocence before the world claimed her. The night in Pimlico is deep and cool. The rain against the glass is a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Pitter, patter, pitter, patter. Diana pulls the quilt up to her chin, closing her eyes against the glow of the street lamps. The children she taught today are all asleep in their beds, dreaming of simple things. And Diana, she sleeps too, unaware that the path she walked today, from her apartment to the school, is a path she will never be able to walk again in the same way. The history of the world is often made in the most ordinary places. In a small classroom in Pimlico, a young woman was preparing for a role she never asked for, but would play with a grace that changed everything. But for now, let the city be quiet. Let the rain wash the streets clean. Sleep now, as we leave the kindergarten behind. The lights are dimming, the world is slowing down, and the story continues to unfold in the silence of the night. The long, long journey is only just beginning, and there is so much more to tell. The scene shifts now, leaving the rain-slicked streets of London behind and traveling far to the north, into the rugged, untamed heart of the Scottish Highlands. This is Balmoral, a place where the earth feels ancient, where the mountains are shrouded in a perpetual, indigo mist, and where the wind whispers through the purple heather with a voice that sounds like 1,000 years of history. For the American listener, imagine a landscape so vast and so silent that you can hear the beating of your own heart. The air here is sharp, cold, and tastes of pine needles and peat smoke. It is late summer in 1980. But in Scotland, summer is only a brief, golden sigh before the autumn chill takes hold. Diana arrives here not as a tourist, but as a guest under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. This is the Balmoral test. A gauntlet of royal etiquette, physical endurance, and social survival, all hidden beneath the guise of a rustic holiday. The castle itself stands like a grey stone giant against the dark green forests, its turrets reaching toward a heavy, slate-colored sky. Inside, the floors are covered in the royal Stuart tartan, and the walls are adorned with the antlered heads of stags, their glass eyes watching every move. The atmosphere is thick with the smell of wet wool, old wood, and the faint, lingering scent of the Queen's favorite lilies. Diana is 19, and the weight of this house is immense. She walks through the corridors, her footsteps echoing on the hard stone, feeling the eyes of the royal family, and the eyes of the ghosts of the past, upon her. The mornings at Balmoral begin early, with the sound of the bagpipes drifting across the misty lawns, a low, haunting drone that signals the start of another day of testing. Diana joins the hunting parties, dressed in tweeds that feel heavy and scratchy against her skin. She walks for miles across the soggy moors, her boots sinking deep into the black mud. Squelch, pull, squelch. The rhythm of the walk is hypnotic. The cold wind bites at her cheeks, turning them a bright, healthy pink, a look that the cameras will soon fall in love with. She finds herself walking beside Prince Charles, through fields of heather that stretch out like a purple ocean. The silence between them is different here than it was in the woods of Althorp. There is a pressure now, an unspoken expectation that hangs in the air like the coming rain. Charles speaks of the land, of the deer, of the soul of Scotland. He is at home here, in this rugged isolation. And Diana, she realizes that to win his heart, she must first win the approval of this land, and the formidable woman who rules it. Imagine the lunch parties on the hills, a simple picnic set against a backdrop of breathtaking grandeur. The smell of hot soup from a thermos, the taste of smoked salmon, the sound of the wind rattling the stalks of dry grass. Diana sits among the royals, laughing at the right moments, keeping her head tilted in that characteristic, shy way. She is performing, even if she doesn't fully realize it yet. She is showing them that she can handle the cold, the mud, and the crushing weight of their traditions. As the sun begins to set, the sky over Balmoral turns a deep, bruised purple. The shadows of the mountains stretch out over the glens, like long, dark fingers reaching for the castle. Inside, the ritual of dinner begins. This is perhaps the most daunting part of the test. The dressing for dinner, the long gowns, the heavy jewelry, the formal silence of the dining room. The dining table is a sea of white linen, polished silver, and sparkling crystal. The candlelight flickers in the drafty room, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The only sound is the soft clink of silver against china, and the low, murmuring voices of the family. Diana sits near the prince, conscious of every movement, every gesture. She watches the way the Queen Mother smiles, the way Prince Philip checks his watch, the way Charles looks at her with a mixture of curiosity and hope. After dinner, the family gathers in the drawing room. The fire roars in the hearth, the logs crackling and spitting sparks onto the stone. Crack, pop, hiss. The heat of the fire is a sharp contrast to the cold drafts that swirl around the edges of the room. Someone plays the piano, a slow, melancholic melody that fills the space between the conversations. Diana sits on a low sofa, her hands folded in her lap, listening to the music and the wind howling in the chimneys. She feels like a bird in a gilded cage, but a cage that is currently open. She could still fly away. She could return to her apartment in London, to her children at the kindergarten, to her life as a private citizen. But the pull of the prince, and the allure of the crown, is beginning to exert its gravity. In the quiet moments of the Highland night, she wonders if she is truly ready for what comes next. The nights at Balmoral are incredibly dark. Without the lights of the city, the stars seem to press down on the earth, brilliant and cold. Diana lies in her bed, the heavy blankets pressed against her. She listens to the sounds of the castle settling, the groaning of the ancient pipes, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of the wind in the pines. It is a lonely sound, a sound that reminds her that even in the middle of a crowd, she is fundamentally alone in this journey. For days, this rhythm continues. The walks, the talks, the silent evaluations. And then, the moment of success. The word goes out through the household, whispered by the valets and the maids. She is the one. She has passed the test. She has charmed the queen, she has braved the weather, she has shown the necessary restraint. The trap is set, though it is decorated in the finest silk and gold. The courtship at Balmoral was not a whirlwind of passion, it was a slow, careful observation. It was a series of quiet moments in a vast landscape, where a young girl's fate was decided by the tilt of her head and her ability to walk through the mud without complaining. To an American audience, it seems like a romance from a book, but the reality was much colder, much more calculated. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine those misty Scottish hills. Feel the dampness of the moss under your feet, hear the haunting call of the bagpipes in the distance, and smell the wood smoke drifting through the cold night air. The story of Diana is shifting now, from the private world of a girl to the public stage of a princess. The highland mist is thick, and the path ahead is hidden, but she is walking it now, step by step, into the heart of the monarchy. Sleep now, as the fires at Balmoral burn low, and the stars watch over the silent glens. The night is long, and the history is unfolding in the quiet, in the dark, in the shadows of the mountains. The date is July 29th, 1981. A day that would forever be etched into the collective memory of the world. In London, the sun is beginning to rise over a city that has not slept, a city that is trembling with a feverish, electric anticipation. But inside the walls of Clarence House, there is a different kind of stillness. Diana is waking up to her last morning as a private citizen, her last morning as a girl before she becomes a symbol, an icon, a princess of Wales. For the American listener, try to visualize the sheer scale of this moment. Outside, nearly 1 million people are lining the streets, their voices creating a low, constant roar that sounds like the distant ocean. But inside Diana's room, the air is thick with the scent of lilies of the valley and the crisp, clean smell of new silk. The dress is there, waiting. A gown of ivory silk taffeta, decorated with 10,000 hand-sewn pearls, and a train that stretches for 25 feet, a river of fabric that seems to hold the weight of all the expectations of the British Empire. The process of dressing is slow, almost like a religious ritual. The rustle of the silk, the soft click of the pearls against one another, the way the bodice is laced tight, restricting her breath. Diana stands in the center of the room, a figure of porcelain and lace. She looks at herself in the mirror, and for a moment, the 19-year-old girl from the Pimlico kindergarten disappears. In her place stands the bride of the century. Then comes the moment of the carriage. The glass coach. To the world watching on television, it looks like a scene from a storybook, a transparent carriage of gold and wood, gliding through the streets. But inside, for Diana, the experience is entirely different. The air inside the coach is hot and stifling. The smell of the old leather seats mixes with the overwhelming scent of her bouquet. Her father, Earl Spencer, sits beside her, his presence a small comfort in the storm of flashbulbs and cheering crowds. As the carriage moves, Diana looks out through the glass. The world is a blur of red, white, and blue. People are screaming her name, waving flags, weeping with a strange, collective joy. She waves back, a rhythmic, practiced motion of the hand, but her mind is elsewhere. She feels the weight of the silk veil against her face, a fine, transparent barrier between her and the reality of the world. The carriage turns onto the Mall, the grand boulevard leading towards St. Paul's Cathedral. The sound of the horses' hooves on the pavement is a steady, rhythmic, clip-clop, clip-clop. It is the heartbeat of the day. Diana focuses on that sound, using it to ground herself as the massive dome of the cathedral comes into view. St. Paul's stands like a mountain of stone, its bells ringing out in a deafening, celebratory peal. Dong, dong, dong. The vibration of the bells can be felt in the very air, a sound that shakes the chest. The carriage stops. The doors are opened, and a wave of heat and sound hits her. As she steps out, the 25 feet of silk train must be carefully unfolded by her bridesmaids. It is a complex dance of fabric, a sea of ivory silk that fills the great west door. She takes her father's arm, and the walk begins. The walk down the aisle. St. Paul's is a cavern of light and shadow. The air inside is cool and smells of ancient stone, incense, and the thousands of flowers that line the nave. The music begins, Jerusalem, a soaring, majestic sound that fills the immense space. Diana begins her long march, 3.5 minutes of walking toward the altar, toward Charles, toward her future. Every step is measured. Every breath is a conscious effort. She looks to her left and right, seeing the faces of kings, queens, presidents, and celebrities. But she is looking for one face in particular. And then she sees her. Camilla. Standing near the aisle, dressed in pale gray. The shadow from Balmoral has followed her into the cathedral. Diana feels a cold shiver beneath the heavy silk, a moment of clarity in the middle of the spectacle. But she keeps walking. The train follows her like a ghost, dragging softly across the black and white marble floor. She reaches the altar. Charles is there, looking small in his naval uniform against the backdrop of the massive gold reredos. They stand together, two figures at the center of a global gaze. The service is a blur of ancient words and solemn vows. Diana's voice is small, a soft whisper that is broadcast to 750 million people around the world. In her nervousness, she gets his names in the wrong order, calling him Philip Charles Arthur George. It is a tiny, human mistake in a ceremony that is otherwise perfect. The rings are exchanged. The gold is warm against her skin. The Archbishop pronounces them man and wife. And in that moment, the girl from Althorp is gone. She is the Princess of Wales. The music swells again, the organ pipes vibrating the floor beneath her feet. The ceremony ends, but the performance is just beginning. They walk back down the aisle, now as a couple. The sun is streaming through the high windows, catching the diamonds in the Spencer tiara, making them dance with a cold, brilliant fire. They emerge from the cathedral into the blinding light of the afternoon. The roar of the crowd is louder now, a wall of sound that is almost physical. They step into the open-topped state postilion landau for the journey back to Buckingham Palace. Now, they are closer to the people. Diana can see the individual faces in the crowd, the tears on the cheeks of old women, the children sitting on their fathers' shoulders. She feels a strange, overwhelming sense of responsibility. They believe in the fairy tale. They need the fairy tale. And she, with her silk veil and her shy smile, is the one who must provide it. The carriage moves through the gates of Buckingham Palace. The world is left outside, for a moment. Inside the palace, the air is cooler, the light is softer. There are photographs to be taken, formal portraits that will be framed in silver and sent to every embassy in the world. Diana stands for hours, the weight of the dress and the tiara beginning to cause a dull ache in her back and head. And then, the balcony. The final act of the day. They step out onto the red-carpeted ledge. The mall is a sea of humanity, a carpet of faces stretching as far as the eye can see. The cheer that goes up is like nothing she has ever heard. It is a roar of love, of hope, and of hunger. They kiss, a brief, public moment that the world has been waiting for. It is the climax of the storybook. But as the sun begins to set over London, and the silk veil is finally lifted, the reality begins to settle in. The dress is packed away into a large, acid-free box. The pearls are silent. The glass coach is returned to the royal mews. Diana is left with the man she has married, and the weight of a crown that she is only just beginning to feel. Tonight, As you settle into your own bed, imagine the quiet after that storm. Imagine the sound of the wind through the empty stands on the mall, the discarded programs blowing across the pavement, the silence that returned to St. Paul's once the candles were blown out. The fairy tale was told, but the real history was only just starting to be written, in the quiet, in the dark, behind the palace walls. Sleep now, as the echoes of the bells fade away. The night is deep, and the journey continues, from the light of the cathedral into the complex shadows of a royal marriage. The world is sleeping, dreaming of princesses, while the princess herself prepares for a world that no fairy tale could have predicted. The grand spectacle of the wedding has faded, the echoes of the bells at St. Paul's have finally gone silent, and the dust has settled on the mall. Now, the story moves away from the land, away from the cheering crowds, and out into the vast, rhythmic, and unpredictable embrace of the Mediterranean Sea. This is the honeymoon. A journey aboard the royal yacht Britannia, a vessel that is essentially a floating palace of blue and gold. For the American listener, imagine the sheer scale of the ocean at night. A deep, ink-black expanse where the only light comes from the cold, distant stars and the phosphorescent glow of the waves breaking against the hull. The air here is thick with the scent of salt, diesel, and the sharp, clean breeze of the open sea. On the surface, it is the most romantic journey in the world. But beneath the deck, in the quiet of the royal suites, the shadows are beginning to lengthen. Diana is 20 years old. She has been a princess for only a few days. The transition from the chaos of London to the isolation of the sea is jarring. The Britannia is a place of rigid tradition. There are 250 crew members on board, yet for Diana, the ship feels strangely empty. The corridors are narrow and polished to a mirror shine, the brass fittings gleaming in the soft, artificial light. Every footstep is muffled by the thick blue carpets, creating a silence that feels heavy and expectant. In the mornings, the sun rises over the Mediterranean in a burst of orange and gold, reflecting off the water like 1,000 shattered diamonds. Breakfast is served on the deck, the white linen snapping in the wind. The smell of fresh coffee, the silver clink of the spoons, the taste of ripe fruit. On the surface, it is a picture of perfection. Charles sits across from her, often lost in a book, or staring out at the horizon. He is at peace with the sea, at peace with the silence. But for Diana, the silence is a void. She tries to connect, to find the man she walked with in the woods of Althorp. But here, on this grand ship, he feels more like the Prince of Wales than ever before. He brings his watercolors, spending hours trying to capture the shifting colors of the water on paper. Diana sits nearby, watching the brush move, listening to the rhythmic splash of the waves. Splash, retreat, splash. The sound is hypnotic, but it also serves as a reminder of how far they are from the shore, and how far she is from the life she once knew. The afternoons are long and quiet. The ship glides past the coast of North Africa, past the Greek islands, their whitewashed houses clinging to the cliffs like tiny shells. The heat is intense, a dry, shimmering warmth that makes the air vibrate. Diana retreats to her cabin to escape the sun. The room is elegant, filled with fresh flowers and photographs in silver frames. But it is here, in the privacy of her suite, that the reality begins to bite. She finds the photographs. 2 pictures of Camilla that Charles has tucked into his diary. It is a small moment, a quiet discovery, but it feels like a thunderclap in the middle of the ocean. The shadows that started at Balmoral and followed her to the cathedral have now climbed aboard the Britannia. The air in the cabin suddenly feels thin, suffocating. She looks out the porthole at the endless blue, feeling the vastness of the sea mirroring the vastness of her own isolation. Dinner on the Britannia is a formal affair, even in the middle of the Mediterranean. The officers are in their summer whites. The table is set with the finest crystal. The candlelight flickers in the humid evening air, casting long, dancing shadows on the bulkheads. Charles speaks of philosophy, of history, of the books he is reading. Diana listens, her smile practiced, her head tilted. But her mind is circling back to those photographs. She realizes that even here, in the middle of their honeymoon, they are not alone. There are 3 people on this ship. The evenings are the hardest. The sun sinks below the horizon, leaving a trail of bruised purple and deep indigo. The ship's lights flicker on, casting a warm glow over the teak decks. The sound of the engines is a constant, low-frequency hum, a vibration that you can feel in your bones. Hum, hum, hum. It is a sound that never stops, much like the thoughts in Diana's head. She tries to talk to him, to express the fear and the loneliness that are growing inside her like a physical weight. But the royal upbringing has taught Charles to avoid scenes. He retreats into the silence, into his books, into his duties. He doesn't understand the storm that is brewing beneath her calm exterior. To him, the honeymoon is a success. To her, it is a slow, agonizing realization that the fairy tale has a dark, hidden price. Imagine the night air on the bridge. The wind is cooler now, carrying the scent of distant land, of jasmine and dry earth. Diana stands at the rail, her hair whipping around her face. She looks down at the dark water churning in the wake of the ship. The foam is white and ghostly against the blackness. She feels a deep, aching homesickness. Not for Althorp, not for London, but for a version of herself that no longer exists. The Britannia continues its journey, a golden bubble floating on a dark sea. To the world watching from the shore, through binoculars and long-range lenses, they are the happiest couple on earth. The press reports on their smiles, their walks on the deck, their visits to sun-drenched islands. The illusion is perfect. But inside the bubble, the oxygen is running out. Diana begins to realize that the glass coach was not just for the wedding day. Her life is now a series of glass walls. She is seen, but not heard. She is admired, but not understood. And on this ship, surrounded by the vastness of the Mediterranean, the walls of the palace have simply been replaced by the walls of the sea. As you listen to the sound of the waves in your mind, try to feel that stillness. The way the ship rocks gently, a slow, rhythmic swaying that should be comforting but feels like the ticking of a clock. The creak of the wood, the distant chime of the ship's bell, the muffled voices of the watchmen on deck. These are the sounds of a honeymoon that was supposed to be a beginning, but felt more like an ending. The shadows are no longer just in the corners of the room. They are inside her. They are part of the marriage now. The people's princess is being forged in the furnace of this loneliness. She is learning to hide her tears behind a smile, to find her own strength in the silence, and to realize that she will have to navigate this ocean alone. The Britannia eventually turns back toward home. The warm winds of the Mediterranean are replaced by the damp, cool air of the English Channel. The honeymoon is over, but the shadows are coming with them. They will follow her back to London, into the palaces, and into the hearts of the millions who will one day call her their own. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine the dark water of the Mediterranean. Hear the rhythmic splash against the side of the boat, and the low hum of the engines. The world is vast, the sea is deep, and sometimes, the grandest journeys are the loneliest. The story is taking a turn now, into the complexities of the heart and the weight of the crown. Sleep now, as the Britannia fades into the mist of the horizon. The night is long, and the stars are watching over the sea. The journey continues, but for tonight, let the water be calm. Let the silence be enough. The honeymoon is over, and the cold, grey light of London has returned. The vastness of the Mediterranean has been replaced by the high, ornate ceilings of Kensington Palace. Apartment 8 and 9. A place of long, silent corridors and the faint, sweet smell of fresh lilies and floor wax. But soon, a new sound begins to fill these rooms, a sound that is both fragile and powerful. The arrival of the heirs. For the American listener, try to imagine the transition from being a bride to being the mother of a future king. The pressure is no longer just a shadow, it is a physical weight. In June 1982, the world holds its breath outside St. Mary's Hospital. The heat of a London summer is heavy, the air still and expectant. And then, Prince William is born. A small, crying life that suddenly anchors Diana to the earth in a way she has never felt before. She returns to the palace, not just as a princess, but as a protector. The nursery is the heart of her world now. Imagine the room, filled with the softest light, the walls painted in gentle creams and pale blues. The smell of baby powder, the warmth of a sleeping infant, the rhythmic creak of a wooden rocking chair. Creak, sway, creak, sway. In this room, the protocols of the palace feel far away. Here, she is not the most photographed woman in the world. She is simply a mother. But the arrival of the heirs is more than just a family moment, it is a dynastic duty fulfilled. The palace watches. The staff moves silently in the background, their eyes observing how the new mother handles her burden. Diana finds herself in a constant struggle to create a bubble of normalcy for her son. She insists on being the one to bathe him, the one to soothe him when he cries in the middle of the night. She wants him to know the touch of her skin, not just the starched white linen of a royal nurse. 2 years later, in September 1984, the cycle repeats. Prince Harry arrives. The spare to the heir. Now, the nursery is a place of soft chaos. 2 small lives that depend entirely on her. Diana feels a profound shift in her soul. She realizes that while she may be losing her husband to the shadows of the past, she has gained something far more enduring. These boys are her allies, her heart walking outside of her body. Imagine a quiet afternoon at Kensington Palace. The rain is tapping gently against the tall windows, pitter, patter, pitter, patter. Inside, the fire is low in the hearth. Diana sits on the floor with William and Harry. The sound of plastic building blocks clattering, the soft giggles, the smell of warm milk and biscuits. To the world, this is a royal residence, a fortress of tradition. To her, in this moment, it is a sanctuary. She tries to bring the world into the palace, and the palace into the world. She takes them to school herself, her hands gripping their small hands tight as they navigate the flashes of the paparazzi. She wants them to see the reality of life, not just the manicured lawns of Balmoral or the silent halls of Windsor. She takes them to hamburger joints, to amusement parks, to homeless shelters. She is teaching them empathy in a place that often feels cold and detached. But the arrival of the heirs also deepens the divide in her marriage. The joy she finds in her children is a joy Charles doesn't always know how to share. He sees the boys as the future of the monarchy, while she sees them as the future of humanity. The tension between duty and love grows. The nursery becomes a fortress where Diana retreats when the pressure of the crown becomes too much to bear. In the quiet of the night, when the boys are asleep, Diana walks through the darkened rooms of the palace. The moon casts long, pale shadows across the rugs. She listens to the rhythmic breathing of her sons, a sound that is more precious to her than any crown jewel. It is a steady, peaceful sound. Rise, fall, rise, fall. It calms her racing heart. It reminds her why she is fighting. For the listener, try to feel that stillness. The way a house feels when children are sleeping. The heavy, peaceful air, the distant hum of the city outside the gates, the ticking of the clock in the hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Time is moving forward. The airs are growing. And with every inch they grow, Diana finds more of her own strength. She becomes a master of the double life. In the mornings, she is the Princess of Wales, dressed in silk and diamonds, visiting hospitals and waving to crowds. But in the evenings, she is the mother in blue jeans, sitting on the edge of a bed, reading a storybook. The transition is exhausting, but it is the only thing that keeps her grounded. The palace staff observes the change in her. She is no longer the shy girl from Althorp. She has a new authority, born from the fierce protection of her children. She challenges the old ways. She refuses to leave them for months at a time for royal tours, insisting that they come with her. She is breaking the mold of the royal mother, and in doing so, she is beginning to break the mold of the monarchy itself. But the shadows are still there. They linger in the hallways, they wait in the empty chairs at the dining table. The arrival of the heirs has fulfilled her duty, but it has not healed her heart. The loneliness she felt on the Britannia is still present, only now, it is filtered through the love she has for her sons. Tonight, as you settle into your own rest, imagine the nursery at Kensington Palace. Hear the soft, steady breathing of the two young princes, and the quiet, rhythmic rocking of the chair as Diana sits in the shadows. The world is vast, the future is uncertain, but in this small, warm room, there is a sense of peace. The people's princess is not just a title, it is a role she has earned through her devotion to these two small lives. The story is moving now, from the joy of motherhood into the complexities of a public life that is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. But for now, let the palace be quiet. Let the children sleep. Let the night hold them in its gentle embrace. The heirs have arrived, and the world will never be the same. The story now takes us away from the nursery's soft light in London and leads us into the heart of the English countryside, to Gloucestershire, to an estate known as Highgrove. On the surface, Highgrove is a masterpiece of Georgian architecture, a house of honey-colored stone surrounded by gardens that are curated with obsessive, artistic care. But as we step onto the gravel path, we realize that the air here is different. It is not just the scent of lavender and damp earth, it is the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of a secret that has no place to hide. This is the home where the marriage was meant to flourish, but instead, it became the stage for a haunting. For the American listener, imagine the profound silence of the English country night. There are no city lights here, only the vast, dark sky and the rhythmic rustle of the ancient cedar trees. Inside Highgrove, the rooms are decorated with impeccable taste, filled with antiques and floral fabrics that suggest a life of rural bliss. But for Diana, every corner of this house felt occupied by a ghost. Not a ghost of the dead, but the invisible, persistent presence of Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana arrives here seeking sanctuary, a place to be a wife and a mother away from the cameras. But she soon realizes that the house is a temple to someone else's influence. The gardens, which Charles spends hours meticulously planning, feel like a landscape she is only visiting, not one she owns. She walks through the walled garden, her silk skirts brushing against the damp boxwood. The smell of the roses is overwhelming, a sweet, cloying fragrance that seems to mask the bitterness beneath. She notices the small signs. The way the phone rings in the middle of the night, only to go silent when she answers. The way Charles retreats to his study for hours, the door closed, the muffled sound of a voice on the other end of the line. The silence of the house begins to feel like a physical weight on her chest. She sits in the drawing room, the fire crackling in the hearth, but the warmth doesn't reach her. Crackle, snap, hiss. The sound of the burning logs is the only company she has in the long, lonely evenings. Highgrove was Charles's escape, his private kingdom. But for Diana, it was a cage made of gold and stone. She tries to make it her own. She brings in bright colors, she fills the rooms with the laughter of William and Harry. But as soon as the children go to bed, the house reverts to its true nature. A place of shadows and unspoken truths. She wanders through the hallways, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floors. Creak, floorboard, silence. She finds herself obsessed with the details. A gift of cufflinks with intertwined initials, a photograph tucked away in a drawer, a name mentioned too often in passing. The ghost of Highgrove is everywhere. It is in the garden where Charles walks alone, it is in the books he reads, it is in the very air he breathes. Diana feels herself becoming a spectator in her own life. She is the Princess of Wales, the most famous woman on earth, yet in this house, she is the intruder. Imagine the atmosphere of a rainy afternoon in Gloucestershire. The mist rolls in from the hills, swallowing the trees and the distant fields. The rain taps against the tall windows with a relentless, hypnotic rhythm. Pitter, patter, pitter, patter. Diana stands by the glass, looking out at the gray landscape. She feels a deep, aching sense of displacement. The fairy tale that the world sees from the outside is crumbling here, in the quiet, damp corners of this country estate. The tension between the couple is a cold, invisible wall. Dinner is served in the formal dining room, the candlelight reflecting off the silver and the dark wood. They sit at opposite ends of the long table, the distance between them feeling like a vast, empty canyon. The sound of the clock ticking in the hallway becomes deafening. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second is a reminder of a life that is being lived in parallel, but never together. Diana tries to confront him, to bring the ghost into the light. But the royal way is to ignore, to suppress, to keep the surface calm at all costs. The ghost remains in the shadows, more powerful for being unnamed. Diana realizes that she is not just fighting a person, she is fighting a system, a history, a deep-seated loyalty that she can never penetrate. She finds solace in the children, taking them out into the gardens to play, to run, to break the heavy silence of the house. But even then, she knows that the house belongs to him, and to the woman who haunts it. She starts to spend more and more time in London, at Kensington Palace, where the air feels slightly less crowded. But the memory of Highgrove follows her. It is the place where her heart began to harden, where the shy Dee of the past began to transform into the warrior of the future. Tonight, as you listen to the wind outside your own window, imagine that house in Gloucestershire. Imagine the cold stone, the beautiful, silent gardens, and the young woman walking through the rooms, searching for a warmth that isn't there. The ghost of Highgrove is a reminder that even the most beautiful places can be the site of the deepest loneliness. The night in the countryside is absolute. There is no hum of traffic, no city glow. Just the wind in the trees and the occasional cry of a fox in the distance. Diana lies in her bed, the heavy curtains drawn, the silence of the house pressing in on her. She is learning to survive in the shadows. She is learning that the crown is a heavy thing, but the heart is even heavier. For the listener, try to feel that stillness. The way a secret feels when it is kept for too long. The way a house feels when love has left it. The story is moving now, away from the attempts at reconciliation and toward a new, colder reality. The ghost has won this round, but Diana is discovering a strength she never knew she had. A strength born of the realization that she must find her own path, even if it leads her away from the security of the palace. Sleep now, as the mist settles over Highgrove. The gardens are dark, the house is silent, and the shadows are at rest. The journey continues, through the cold nights and the difficult days, toward a destination that is still far beyond the horizon. The people's princess is finding her voice, and soon, the world will hear it. The fire in the drawing room has turned to gray ash. The clock in the hall continues its steady march. And in the silence of the Gloucestershire night, the history of a woman and a monarchy continues to be written, one quiet, painful word at a time. The year is 1991. And a heavy, grey autumn has settled over London. The rain is constant, a fine, silver mist that clings to the iron gates of Kensington Palace and turns the vibrant gardens into a landscape of muted greens and charcoal shadows. Inside apartment 8. The atmosphere is thick with a different kind of tension. It is the tension of a long-held silence that is finally, slowly, beginning to break. Diana is 30 years old, and she has reached a precipice. The walls of the palace, which once promised protection, now feel like they are closing in on her. For the American listener, imagine a room filled with the soft glow of a single lamp, casting long, flickering shadows against the bookshelf. The air is heavy with the scent of vanilla candles and the faint, metallic smell of the rain outside. Diana sits on a plush, cream-colored sofa, her legs tucked under her. In front of her, on a low mahogany table, sits a small, unassuming black tape recorder. To anyone else, it is a simple machine. But in this room, at this moment, it is a weapon, a confessional, and a lifeline. The process is a secret. A dangerous dance of trust and necessity. Diana cannot meet the journalist Andrew Morton directly, the risk of the palace security discovering them is too great. And so, she records her truth in the dead of the night, or in the quiet hours of the afternoon when the staff is busy elsewhere. She presses the record button. Click. The sound is sharp in the silent room. The small plastic wheels begin to spin, a rhythmic, hypnotic rotation that will capture the voice the world thinks it knows, but has never truly heard. She begins to speak. At first, her voice is hesitant, a soft whisper that barely rises above the sound of the rain against the glass. She speaks of her childhood, of the cold halls of Althorp, and the hollow ache of her parents' divorce. She speaks of the girl she was, a girl who just wanted to be loved. But as the tape continues to spin, the tone changes. The hesitation fades, replaced by a raw, quiet intensity. She speaks of the ghost of Highgrove. She speaks of the loneliness that felt like a physical weight on her chest during her honeymoon. She speaks of the 3 people in her marriage, naming the shadows that have haunted her for a decade. For the first time, the People's Princess is stripping away the silk and the diamonds to reveal the scars beneath. Every word is a brick being removed from the wall she has been forced to build around herself. Imagine the scene as she speaks. The way her hands tremble slightly as she reaches for a glass of water. The way she pauses to listen for footsteps in the hallway. Every creak of the floorboard outside her door makes her heart race. She is committing an act of revolution inside the heart of the monarchy. The tape recorder continues its steady, silent work. Whir. It is the only witness to her vulnerability. She describes the pressure of the public gaze. How it felt to smile for the cameras while her heart was breaking. How it felt to be a symbol of a fairy tale that she knew was a lie. She speaks of her struggles with her own body, her tears in the dark, the desperate need for someone to simply see her, not as a princess, but as a human being. The recordings are not just a list of grievances, they are a map of a soul trying to find its way back to the light. The tapes are smuggled out of the palace, hidden in the bottom of a shopping bag or passed through a trusted friend. They travel through the rain-soaked streets of London to a secret location where Andrew Morton waits. He listens to them in the dark, stunned by the honesty, by the pain, by the sheer bravery of the woman on the other end of the line. He hears the sighs, the long pauses, the sound of a woman finally taking a breath after years of holding it. The publication of the book, Diana, Her True Story, would later shake the foundations of the British establishment. But here, in this room, it is still a secret. Diana sits in the silence after the recorder has been turned off. The stop button clicks, and the room feels even quieter than before. The wheels have stopped spinning, but the words are now out in the world, or at least, on their way. Tonight, as you settle into your own bed, try to feel that stillness. The way the air feels when a great secret is about to be revealed. Imagine the steady, rhythmic pulse of the city outside, while inside the palace, a single woman is changing the course of history with nothing but her voice and a small plastic tape. The secret tapes were the beginning of the end of the old world, and the birth of the Diana the world would come to love even more. She walks to the window, pulling back the heavy velvet curtain just an inch. The street lamps of London are blurred by the rain, orange glows in the grey mist. She feels a strange mixture of terror and relief. The shy D is gone. In her place is a woman who has realized that her silence was her cage, and her voice is her key. The night in Kensington Palace is deep. The children are asleep in the next wing, their breathing steady and peaceful. The staff is resting. The prince is elsewhere. Diana is alone, but she is no longer lonely in the same way. She has shared her burden. She has spoken her truth into the spinning wheels of a machine. For the listener, try to hear that quiet. The sound of the rain, the ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the palace's heating system. These are the sounds of a revolution in progress. Not one fought with swords, but one fought with words, in the shadows, in the quiet hours of a London afternoon. Sleep now, as the rain washes over the palace. The tapes are safe. The truth is moving. And the woman who spoke it is finally, for the first time, beginning to feel free. The story is taking a bold, dangerous turn, but it is a turn toward the light. The lamp is turned off. The room is plunged into darkness, but the air feels lighter. The secret is no longer just hers. And as the world sleeps, the history of a princess and a queen is being rewritten, one spoken word at a time. The internal storm of the secret tapes has passed for a moment, and now, the lens of our story widens. We step out from the shadowed corridors of Kensington Palace and into the vast, bright, and often heartbreaking world of public service. This is the tapestry of public duty, a sprawling, intricate map of human suffering and hope that Diana began to weave with her own hands. For the American listener, imagine the contrast. One day she is draped in the Spencer tiara and silk gowns, and the next, she is standing in the red dust of Angola, or the sterile, quiet wards of a London hospital. She realized early on that her title was not just a crown, it was a bridge. A bridge that could reach the places where the world was too afraid to look. Imagine the sound of a hospital corridor at night. The rhythmic squeak of a nurse's shoes on the linoleum, the distant hum of a life support machine, the heavy, sterile silence. Diana enters these spaces not as a royal icon, but as a woman who understands what it feels like to be broken. In 1987, she walks into the Middlesex Hospital in London, into the ward of a new and terrifying disease, AIDS. The world is paralyzed by fear, by myths, by a refusal to touch. But Diana walks to the bedside of a young man. She doesn't wear gloves. She doesn't keep a distance. She reaches out her hand and takes his. The touch is simple, quiet, and revolutionary. The silence of the room is broken only by the soft murmur of their voices. In that one gesture, she dismantled a mountain of stigma. Her duty becomes a sensory experience. Imagine the heat of a crowded orphanage in Pakistan, the smell of jasmine mixed with the dry scent of the earth. She sits on the floor, her expensive clothes of no consequence. She holds children whose names she will never know, but whose pain she feels in her own soul. Her hands, the same hands that adjusted the silk veil at St. Paul's, are now covered in the dust of the world. She travels to the leper colonies of India, a place of profound isolation, where the silence is the silence of the forgotten. Again, she touches. She sits on the edge of a bed, her eyes meeting the eyes of those who have been cast out by society. She listens to their stories, stories of loss and longing that mirror her own. She finds a strange kind of peace here, in the company of the hurting. Among the outcasts, she is no longer an outsider. The tapestry continues to grow, thread by thread. Imagine the vast, sun-scorched landscapes of Angola in 1997. The wind whispers through the tall grass, a sound that hides the deadly secret of landmines beneath the soil. Diana puts on a ballistic vest and a clear plastic visor. She walks through a cleared path, her footsteps steady and deliberate. Crunch, crunch, silence. The world watches through their television screens, mesmerized by the image of a princess in a minefield. But for her, it is about the mother she met earlier that day, the woman who lost her child to a hidden explosion. Her public duty is a rhythmic cycle of travel and return. The roar of the jet engines, the flash of the cameras at the airport, and then the sudden, jarring transition back to the silence of the palace. She carries the weight of these encounters back with her. The faces of the sick, the eyes of the hungry, the hands of the dying. They live in her mind, a private gallery of human experience that she carries through the long, lonely nights in London. Imagine her back at Kensington Palace, sitting in her study. The rain is tapping against the glass, pitter, patter, pitter, patter. She is surrounded by briefing papers and letters from around the world. Each letter is a cry for help, a thread that needs to be woven into her life. She writes back, her pen scratching against the paper in the quiet room. This is the part of the duty that the cameras never see. The hours of study, the phone calls to charities, the quiet advocacy for the voiceless. She is redefining what it means to be a royal. She is moving away from the ribbon cutting and the plaque unveiling. She is diving into the deep end of human misery, and she is doing it with a grace that is both soft and unshakable. The tapestry of public duty is becoming her true crown. It is a crown made of the gratitude of the millions she has touched, a crown that no palace can ever take away. But the cost is high. She absorbs the pain of the world like a sponge. She returns from these trips exhausted, her eyes hollow, her spirit weary. The contrast between the suffering she sees abroad and the cold, formal life she lives at home becomes unbearable. How can she care about the color of the napkins at a state dinner when she has just held the hand of a dying man in a hospice? The gap between her public duty and her private reality is widening into a chasm. Tonight, as you settle into your own sanctuary, try to feel the global reach of her heart. Imagine the different sounds of her journey. The wind in the African grass, the soft rustle of hospital sheets, the chanting of crowds in Sarajevo, and the quiet, steady rhythm of her own breathing as she navigates it all. She is a woman who found her power not in the palace, but in the service of others. The night is deep over London. The city is quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic. Diana lies in her bed, her mind a kaleidoscope of faces and places. She is tired, but there is a new sense of peace in her heart. She has found her purpose. She is the Queen of Hearts, a title given to her by the people, and it is the only one that truly matters to her now. The tapestry is nearly complete. The threads of her life are now irrevocably bound to the threads of the world. She has become a global humanitarian, a beacon of empathy in a world that often feels cold and dark. As she sleeps, the prayers of those she has helped rise like incense into the night sky. For the listener, try to hear that quiet strength. The sound of a life being lived for something greater than oneself. The journey is moving toward its final chapters, through the challenges and the triumphs, toward a legacy that will never fade. The tapestry of public duty is her gift to the world, and it is a gift that continues to give long after the lights of the palace have dimmed. Sleep now, as the world turns. The stars are watching over the hospitals, the orphanages, and the minefields. And they are watching over the woman who dared to touch them all. The story continues, and the light is growing. Kensington Palace, a place once envisioned as the center of a royal fairy tale, has transformed in the year 1992 into something else entirely. It has become an island of profound, echoing solitude in the heart of London. We are speaking of the time when the separation of the Prince and Princess of Wales was officially announced to the world. Diana is now the sole mistress of apartments 8 and 9. But this independence did not arrive like a celebration. It arrived like a long, heavy, and necessary sigh in the middle of a cold night. For the American listener, try to visualize the atmosphere inside those high stone walls. Outside, the wind whispers through the ancient trees of Hyde Park, a sound of shifting leaves and distant city hums. But inside the palace, the walls seem to have forgotten how to speak. As Diana walks from one room to another, the only sound is the soft, rhythmic swish of her silk trousers against the heavy rugs. This separation was not merely a legal event, it was a process of Diana reclaiming every square inch of her physical and emotional space. She decides to strip away the suffocating symbols of royal tradition from her private home. The furniture that bore the mark of Charles's taste, the heavy, dark mahogany, the velvet drapes that seemed to keep the sunlight at bay, she begins to replace them all. One by one, the rooms become brighter, lighter, more open. Into the cold, formal air of Kensington, she brings the scent of fresh white lilies, vanilla-scented candles, and modern, comfortable sofas where she can actually sit and breathe. This is her quiet revolution. Every time a portrait is removed, every time a rug is changed, the sound of the worker's footsteps is the sound of her shackles falling away. Imagine the stillness of those long, weekday afternoons. The sun filters through the tall, multi-paned windows, casting long rectangles of pale gold across the floor. Diana walks barefoot across the carpet of her living room, a sensation she was rarely allowed to enjoy in the rigid years before. There is no royal protocol here. No constant, judging gaze of the establishment. She is building a world where she is first a mother, and second a woman. The dining table is no longer 20 feet long. It is small, intimate, a place where she sits with William and Harry to eat pizza and laugh like ordinary people. The clink of a fork, the pour of a glass of juice, the unfiltered, high-pitched giggles of two young boys, these are the new melodies of her life. But at night, when the boys are tucked into bed and the palace falls into its deepest slumber, the building returns to its true nature. A vast, hollow, stone fortress. Diana sits in her study, watching the London sky through the glass. She watches the city lights twinkle in the distance, reflecting on how heavy freedom can actually feel. The grandfather clock in the hallway provides a steady, relentless heartbeat. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second is a reminder that she is now truly on her own. Outside, the security guards patrol the gravel paths. The muffled sound of their boots, crunch, thud, serves as a reminder that even in her freedom, she is still a prisoner of her own fame. Her public work changes during this period of separation as well. Kensington Palace is no longer just a home, it is her headquarters, her sanctuary, and her office. The morning silence is broken by the sharp, rhythmic ringing of the telephone. Bring, 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 bring. She answers it herself now. She writes her own letters, her pen scratching across the heavy cream stationery in the quiet of the morning. Scratch, scribble, scratch. These are the sounds of her new power. She is no longer the wife of, she is simply Diana. A woman finding her own voice in the silence of a broken marriage. The palace staff notices a change in her posture. She is no longer the 19-year-old girl with the tilted head and the shy eyes. She is a woman who has walked through fire and come out cold and focused. The kitchen, once a place of formal preparation, now feels more human. She wanders in to make her own toast, to smell the steam of the kettle as the water begins to boil. Hiss, bubble, hiss. The simple act of making tea becomes a meditative ritual, a small victory of the self over the system. On rainy London days, the palace takes on a melancholic beauty. The rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the glass, pitter, patter, pitter, patter. Diana spends hours in her library. The smell of old books and leather, the crisp sound of a page turning. Crackle, flip. She is no longer just reading royal biographies. She is reading about psychology, spirituality, and the healing of the soul. She is rebuilding herself from the inside out. The separation has given her the one thing the monarchy tried to take away, the time to think. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she wanders into the private gardens of the palace. The grass is damp with evening dew, cooling her feet. The sound of the crickets, the distant, low roar of London traffic, and the rustle of the wind in the hedges. This stillness is her fuel. She realizes that without the royal title, she is actually more powerful. The walls of Kensington Palace are no longer keeping her in, they are keeping the chaos out. For the listener, try to feel that specific type of quiet. The quiet of a woman who has finally stopped running. The shadows in the corner of the room are no longer scary, they are just part of the landscape. She pulls the heavy velvet curtains shut, blocking out the flashbulbs of the world. She sinks into the soft pillows of her bed, listening to the rhythm of her own breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. This steady pulse is her anchor. The separation at Kensington was the most important chapter of her internal life. It was the bridge between the girl she was and the icon she would become. She lost her status as Her Royal Highness, but she gained her status as a human being. Apartment 8 is no longer just an address, it is the birthplace of a new kind of queen, a queen who doesn't need a throne to lead. The night grows deeper over Kensington. The moon casts a silver glow over the blue carpets, creating strange, ghostly patterns on the walls. Diana closes her diary, the sound of the lock clicking shut, snap. She is ready for sleep. Outside, the wind has died down, and the trees stand like silent sentinels. The city of London sleeps, and Diana sleeps with it, preparing for the battles of tomorrow. This silence is not an end. It is a preparation. It is the quiet before the next great storm. Diana is no longer a part of the royal history, she is becoming history itself. The separation at Kensington taught her that being alone is not the same as being lonely, and that sometimes, you have to lose everything to find yourself. Sleep now, as the lights of the palace dim. Feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders. The night is long, and the stars are watching over the woman who chose her own path. The story continues, from the shadows of the palace to the light of the world's heart. The month is November, and the year is 1995. A thick, damp fog has rolled off the River Thames, weaving through the black iron gates of Kensington Palace like a silent intruder. London is quiet, wrapped in the cold, indigo blanket of a Sunday evening. Inside apartment 8, the atmosphere is charged with a heavy, electric stillness. This is the night of the panorama interview, the night when the people's princess decides to step out of the shadows and speak her truth directly into the living rooms of the world. For the American listener, try to visualize the incredible secrecy of this moment. To get the BBC camera crew into the palace without the security guards noticing, they had to be smuggled in, their heavy equipment hidden in boxes as if they were just delivering furniture or a new piano. Imagine the sound of the van's tires on the gravel path, crunch, crunch, silence. The crew moves through the darkened hallways, their shadows stretching long and thin against the floral wallpaper. They are ghosts in a house of secrets. Diana has chosen her setting with meticulous care. We are in her private sitting room. The air is warm, smelling of vanilla-scented candles and the faint, sweet aroma of fresh lilies. But beneath the fragrance, there is the sharp, metallic tang of nervous energy. The room is lit not by the grand chandeliers of the palace, but by the soft, flickering orange glow of candles. Flicker, dance, fade. The light casts a golden hue over the velvet cushions and the framed photographs of her boys. Diana sits in a high-backed chair, her posture perfect, yet there is a subtle tension in her shoulders. She is dressed in a dark, somber blazer, her eyeliner heavy and dark, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. Opposite her sits Martin Bashir, a man who represents the world's curiosity. The camera is a silent, unblinking eye, its lens catching the glint of the diamonds on her fingers. The red light of the recorder blinks, a tiny, rhythmic, crimson heartbeat in the dim room. The interview begins not with a shout, but with a whisper. Diana's voice is low, a soft, cultured murmur that seems to vibrate in the quiet air. She speaks of her arrival into the royal family, describing herself as a thick plank who didn't know what she was getting into. But as the minutes tick by, the tone shifts. The clock on the mantelpiece continues its steady, relentless march. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second brings her closer to the words that can never be taken back. She speaks of the 3 people in her marriage. The words hang in the air like a cold mist. For the first time, the world hears the name Camilla not as a rumor, but as a reality that shattered a heart. The honesty is raw, it is uncomfortable, and it is profoundly human. She speaks of her bulimia, describing it as a secret disease that she used as a release valve for the pressure of her life. She talks of the self-harm, the tears in the dark, the feeling of being a product on a shelf that people just wanted to take home and admire. Imagine the silence in the room between her sentences. It is a heavy, expectant silence. You can hear the faint hum of the heating pipes, the distant, muffled siren of a police car somewhere on Kensington High Street, and the rhythmic, steady breathing of the woman who is dismantling her own fairy tale. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. She is no longer the shy girl from the woods of Althorp. She is a woman reclaiming her narrative, one quiet, devastating sentence at a time. For the American audience, this was the moment the American dream version of royalty died. It was replaced by something much more complex, much more relatable. She speaks of her desire to be a queen of people's hearts. Not a queen on a throne, but a queen who understands the pain of a broken marriage, the struggle of motherhood, and the weight of loneliness. The candles have burned down lower now, the wax dripping in slow, translucent tears down the side of the silver holders. The interview lasts for hours, but it feels like a lifetime. Bashir asks about the future, about the crown, about the man she married. Diana's answers are deliberate. She is calm, almost unnervingly so. She has been through the fire, and tonight, she is the one holding the flame. The cameras capture every blink, every slight tilt of the head, every moment where her voice nearly breaks but holds firm. Outside, the fog has thickened. The world has no idea what is happening inside these walls. The security guards continue their patrol, their boots rhythmically hitting the pavement. Thud, crunch, thud, crunch. They are guarding a princess, unaware that she is currently setting fire to the very institution they are paid to protect. When the cameras finally stop, and the red light goes dark, the room feels different. The air is lighter, yet colder. The crew packs up their equipment in total silence, moving like shadows back toward the service entrance. Diana remains in her chair for a moment, looking at the flickering candles. The stop button has been pressed, but the echoes of her words are already traveling through the air, preparing to explode across every television screen on the planet. Tonight, as you settle into the quiet of your own room, imagine that candlelit sanctuary. Feel the weight of the secrets that were poured into that small black lens. The panorama interview was not just a media event, it was a scream for help delivered in a whisper. It was the moment Diana chose truth over tradition, and in doing so, she became more than a princess. She became a martyr of the heart. The night in London is deep now. The fog has swallowed the palace whole, turning it into a ghostly fortress in the middle of a sleeping city. Diana walks to her bedroom, her footsteps soft on the blue carpet. The boys are asleep in their rooms, unaware that their world has just changed forever. She closes her eyes, listening to the distant, rhythmic hum of the city. Hum, hum, hum. The silence of Kensington Palace is no longer the silence of isolation. It is the silence of a woman who has finally said what she needed to say. The story is moving now, out of the palaces and into the final, tragic, and beautiful chapters of her life. The panorama interview was her declaration of independence, and the price of that independence would be higher than she could ever have imagined. Sleep now, as the candles finally flicker out. The room is dark, but the words are out in the light. The night is long, and the stars are watching over the woman who dared to tell the truth. The journey continues, through the storms and the shadows, toward a legacy that is written in the hearts of the world. The year is 1996, and the high, summer sun of July is casting long, sharp shadows over the manicured lawns of Kensington Palace. Today is not a day of celebration, nor is it a day of mourning. It is a day of finality. The decree absolute has been issued. The ink is dry on the papers that officially end a 15-year marriage that began with a glass coach and ended with a quiet, legal signature. Diana is 35 years old, and for the first time since she was a teenager, she is no longer Her Royal Highness. She is simply Diana, Princess of Wales. For the American listener, try to imagine the weight of a title being lifted from your shoulders. It is a strange, paradoxical sensation. It is a loss of protection, but it is also a gain of the self. Inside apartment 8. The air feels different today. The heavy, invisible presence of the establishment has begun to recede, like the tide pulling away from a rocky shore, leaving behind a new, vast, and somewhat frightening landscape. The rooms are still grand, the ceilings are still high, but the silence is no longer filled with the pressure of being future queen. Imagine the small, physical changes that signal this new reality. The stationery on her desk is being replaced. The heavy, embossed gold crests of the Prince of Wales are being cleared away. In their place, she chooses simpler, cleaner lines. The scratch of her pen on the new paper is a steady, rhythmic, grounding sound. Scratch, scribble, scratch. She is writing her own future now, one letter at a time. The scent of her favorite tuberose and jasmine perfume hangs in the air, a floral cloud that marks her territory as a woman, not just a royal figurehead. She spends time in her dressing room, looking at the clothes that defined her old life. The formal suits, the heavy silk gowns designed for state banquets, the hats that acted as both a crown and a shield. She begins to simplify. The wardrobe becomes more athletic, more modern, more reflective of a woman who is ready to move. She feels the texture of the fabrics, the softness of cashmere, the crispness of white cotton. These are the textures of her independence. But the divorce brings a new kind of isolation. Her office at St. James's Palace is closed to her. Many of her old friends, those loyal to the system, have quietly drifted away into the London fog. The telephone in her hallway rings less often, and when it does, the silence after the call feels even deeper. Bring, 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 bring. The sound is a reminder of the connections she has lost. But Diana finds a strange comfort in this winnowing. She is learning who stays when the gold braid is gone. Imagine a quiet August afternoon in the palace gardens. The heat is shimmering over the grass, and the bees are humming a low, hypnotic tune in the lavender bushes. Hum, hum, hum. Diana walks alone, her feet sinking into the soft, sun-warmed earth. She is no longer walking for the cameras, she is walking for herself. She reflects on the HRH title. It was a prefix that defined her for half her life, and losing it feels like losing a limb, yet the body is learning to compensate. She realized that the people didn't love the title, they loved the woman. The divorce settlement provides her with financial security, but it comes with strings. She remains at Kensington Palace, a tenant in a royal house. She is free, but she is still within the perimeter. The security guards still stand at the gates, their uniforms a constant reminder of the firm she has left. The thud of their boots on the gravel, crunch, thud, crunch, thud. It is a sound that will always be part of her background, a rhythmic pulse of a life that can never be entirely private. She finds her own rhythm in this new world. She wakes early, before the city of London fully stirs. The light at 6 a.m. is pale and silver, filtering through the curtains. She drinks juice in her kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant, muffled sound of the first morning buses. This is the boring part of her history, the part that is most precious. The quiet, undocumented moments of a woman making her own breakfast. She pours her energy into a smaller number of charities. She chooses the ones that reflect her true passions: homelessness, landmines, the suffering of the forgotten. Without the HRH, her visits feel more personal. She is no longer a representative of the crown visiting the people. She is a person visiting people. The handshake is warmer, the eye contact is longer. She is building a new kind of royalty, one based on empathy rather than etiquette. For the American audience, this was the chapter where Diana became truly one of us. She was a single mother navigating a difficult divorce, dealing with an ex-husband, and trying to raise her sons in a world that wouldn't stop watching. She takes William and Harry on vacations that are more adventurous, more real. She wants them to see the world beyond the palace gates. The sound of their laughter on a boat or a beach is the only validation she needs. The evenings at Kensington are still long. The sun sets over the London skyline, turning the sky a deep, bruised orange. Diana sits in her sitting room, the same room where she gave the Panorama interview. But the candles are not lit for a camera today. They are lit for her. The flicker of the flame is a companion in the stillness. Flicker, shadow, flicker, shadow. She reads, she listens to music, she thinks about the decade ahead. She is only 35. Her life is more than half over, though she doesn't know it yet. She starts to explore the world outside of the British orbit. She looks toward America, toward the Middle East, toward a global stage that is bigger than the monarchy she left behind. She is a free agent, a humanitarian superstar. The finality of divorce was not a wall, it was a door. And as she stands on the threshold, she feels a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, Imagine that sense of a new beginning. The way the air feels after a storm has passed, and the sky is clear, but the ground is still wet. Imagine the quiet hallways of Kensington Palace, now belonging to a woman who has claimed her own name. The HRH is gone, but the princess remains. The night in London is calm. The stars are hidden behind a thin layer of clouds, but the city glow is a warm, amber light on the horizon. Diana closes her eyes, the sound of her own steady breathing the only music in the room. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. She is safe. She is free. And for tonight, that is enough. The story is moving toward the final summer, the final travels, and the final, enduring legacy. But in this moment, in the quiet of 1996, let us leave her in the peace of her newfound independence. The palace is still, the city is quiet, and the heart is finally, slowly, beginning to heal. Sleep now, as the shadows of the divorce fade into the darkness of the night. The journey continues, and the light is waiting just beyond the morning mist. The year is 1997, and the month is January. We leave behind the damp, gray mists of London and travel thousands of miles south, to a land where the sun is a fierce, unrelenting weight and the earth is the color of dried blood. This is Angola, a country scarred by decades of conflict, where the beauty of the landscape hides a jagged, lethal secret just beneath the surface. As we step off the plane, the heat hits like a physical wall, carrying the scent of dry grass, wood smoke, and the metallic tang of red dust. This is the setting for what will become Diana's most iconic act of public duty, a walk that will redefine her life and the world's understanding of courage. For the American listener, try to visualize the vastness of this African plateau. The horizon stretches out forever, a shimmering line where the scorched earth meets a sky of brilliant, hard blue. There is a specific sound to this silence. It is the sound of the wind whispering through the tall, golden grass, a dry, rattling sound that feels ancient and indifferent. Inside this silence, there is a tension. Because here, in the province of Wombo, the ground is not just earth. It is a graveyard of hidden machinery. Landmines. Thousands of them, waiting in the dark, silent and patient. Diana is 35 years old. She stands at the edge of a cleared path, a narrow strip of safety in a world of danger. She is not wearing the silk of the palace or the diamonds of a state dinner. Today, she wears a heavy, ballistic flak jacket, a thick, protective vest of pale blue. Over her face is a clear, plastic visor. The weight of the equipment is significant, a physical reminder of the stakes. She feels the sweat trickling down her neck, the dust coating her skin, the rhythmic thumping of her heart against the inside of the vest. Thump, thump, thump. Imagine the scene through the lens of a camera. The bright white of her shirt against the red dirt. The way she tilts her head, looking down at the path. The deminers are there, men who spend their lives on their knees, gently brushing away the earth with small brushes. The sound of their work is a soft, rhythmic, scratching. Scrape, brush, scrape, brush. It is a sound of immense patience. One wrong move, one stray pebble, and the silence of the plateau would be shattered forever. Diana takes her first step onto the path. The sound of her boot hitting the dry earth is sharp and clear. Crunch. Silence. Another step. Crunch. Silence. Every movement is deliberate. She is walking through a minefield that was once a lively neighborhood, a place where children played and mothers walked to fetch water. Now, it is a no man's land. As she walks, she is not just moving through space, she is moving through history. She is carrying the eyes of the world with her, focusing them on the invisible victims of a war they have long forgotten. For the listener, try to feel the stillness of that walk. The way the heat ripples over the ground, making the distance look like water. The way the wind catches the edge of her visor, a slight, plastic rattling sound. Diana is not speaking. She doesn't need to. The act of walking is the message. She reaches the end of the cleared path, turns, and walks back again. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic movement. Back and forth. Safety and danger. Life and the hidden threat of death. She stops to sit with a young girl. The girl's name is Sandra Thajika. She is 13 years old, and she is missing a leg, taken by one of the silent machines in the grass. Diana sits beside her on a low, wooden bench. The wood is sun-bleached and silvered by time. The smell of the girl's skin, the warmth of the sun on their shoulders, the soft, melodic sound of the Portuguese language being whispered in the background. Diana reaches out and touches the girl's knee, her hand resting gently on the prosthetic limb. There is no pity in the touch, only a deep, shared recognition of pain. In this moment, the people's princess is fully realized. She is a world away from the ghost of Highgrove or the separation at Kensington. Here, in the dust of Angola, she has found a purpose that is larger than her own story. She realizes that her fame is a tool, a spotlight that she can aim at the darkest corners of the earth. The cameras click and we're in the background, a frantic, mechanical heartbeat. But inside the circle of her conversation with the girl, there is a profound, peaceful silence. As the afternoon light begins to soften, turning the red earth into a deep, glowing orange, Diana walks through a local hospital. The ward is filled with the sounds of the suffering. The low, rhythmic moaning of those in pain, the rustle of thin sheets, the distant crying of a child. The air is thick and still. Diana moves from bed to bed, her presence a cooling breeze in the heat of the room. She doesn't rush. She lingers. She listens to the stories of how the minds changed their lives in a single, explosive second. Imagine her back at the guest house that evening. The sun has set, leaving the sky a bruised purple, filled with more stars than she has ever seen in London. The crickets have begun their nightly chorus, a steady, rhythmic, pulsing sound. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Diana sits on the veranda, a glass of water in her hand. The dust of the day is still in her hair, and the weight of the stories she heard is heavy on her spirit. She thinks of the path she walked today. A path of survival. She knows that back in England, politicians are arguing about her political interference. They are talking about protocols and neutrality. But here, under the African stars, those words feel hollow and meaningless. The only reality is the red dirt, the missing limbs, and the courage of the people who live here every day. She feels a new kind of resolve hardening within her. She is no longer afraid of the palace or the press. She has seen the face of real tragedy, and it has made her fearless. For the American audience, this was the moment Diana became a global stateswoman. She was no longer just a fashion icon or a tragic wife. She was a force of nature, a woman who would walk into a minefield to prove a point about humanity. The landmine path was her final transformation. It was the moment the butterfly fully emerged from the cocoon of the monarchy. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine that red, dusty path. Feel the heat of the Angolan sun on your face, and hear the rhythmic, crunching sound of boots on dry earth. Imagine the silence of the minefield, a silence that is now being broken by the voice of a woman who refused to stay quiet. The world is vast, and the shadows are many, but there are those who carry a light into the darkness. The night in Angola is absolute. The fires in the village have burned down to glowing embers, and the wind has died away. Diana closes her eyes, the image of the little girl, Sandra, etched into her mind. She knows that her work here is just the beginning. She is dreaming of a world without mines, a world where children can run through the grass without fear. The wheel of time turns once more, and the red dust of Angola is replaced by the shimmering, azure brilliance of the French Riviera. It is July 1997, the final summer of Diana's life. We find ourselves in St. Tropez, a place where the sunlight feels like liquid gold pouring over the terracotta rooftops, and the scent of salt air mixes with the expensive fragrance of jasmine and sun-drenched pines. This is a summer of light, of laughter, and of a strange, lingering melancholy that haunts the edges of the frame. Diana is 36 years old, and she is standing on the threshold of a new world. For the American listener, try to visualize the sheer, blinding beauty of the Mediterranean in midsummer. The water is a deep, impossible turquoise, so clear that you can see the white sand and the swaying seagrass far below the surface. The heat is intense, but it is softened by a steady, rhythmic breeze that ruffles the surface of the sea into a million sparkling diamonds. Diana is a guest of the Al-Fayed family, staying on their magnificent yacht, the Jonquil. It is a floating palace of teak and white enamel, gliding silently through the waves like a dream made of wood and steel. Imagine the sound of the morning on the yacht. The soft, rhythmic lap of the water against the hull. Splash, retreat, splash. The distant, muffled cry of a seagull circling in the high, pale blue sky. Diana wakes early, before the sun has climbed too high. She steps out onto the deck, her bare feet feeling the warmth of the wood. The air is fresh and tastes of salt. She is surrounded by a kind of luxury that is different from the palace. Here, it is not about tradition or protocol, it is about indulgence, escape, and the freedom to simply be. But even here, in this paradise, the world is watching. Across the water, a fleet of smaller boats circles the Jonquil, filled with photographers and their long, intrusive lenses. The sound of their shutters is like a frantic, mechanical insect in the distance. Click, 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 click. Diana looks at them through her sunglasses, a barrier of dark glass between her and the gaze of the world. She is used to it, but the noise of the chase feels louder this summer. It is a constant, buzzing reminder that there is no true sanctuary for the most famous woman on earth. She spends her days with William and Harry, the two anchors of her life. Imagine the scene on the deck. The sound of the boys splashing into the water, their shouts of joy echoing over the bay. Diana watches them, a soft, genuine smile lighting up her face. She jumps from the high deck, her body cutting through the blue water in a perfect, graceful arc. Under the surface, there is only silence. A cool, blue world where the cameras cannot follow. For those few seconds, she is weightless, free, and alone. As the sun reaches its zenith, the heat becomes a heavy, golden blanket. Diana retreats to the shaded lounge, the white linen curtains fluttering in the breeze. She reads, she thinks, she talks with Dodi Al-Fayed. The air is filled with the low, rhythmic murmur of conversation, the clink of ice in a glass, the rustle of a silk sarong. Clink, stir, sip. The relationship with Dodie is new, a summer romance played out on a global stage. To the world, it is a scandal, a headline, a spectacle. To Diana, it is perhaps a distraction, a way to feel seen and desired after the long, cold years of her marriage. The afternoons stretch out into infinity. The yacht moves slowly along the coast, past the hidden coves and the grand villas hidden in the trees. The sound of the engines is a low, distant hum, a vibration that suggests constant motion. Hum, hum, hum. Diana sits at the rail, her chin resting on her hand. She looks toward the horizon, toward the place where the sea meets the sky. She is planning her future. She speaks of moving to America, of finding a place where she can work and live without the crushing weight of the British establishment. She is dreaming of a life that is truly her own. For the listener, try to feel the stillness of those golden hours. The way the light changes as the afternoon fades, turning the turquoise water into a deep, bruised indigo. The scent of the evening begins to drift from the shore, grilled fish, rosemary, and the sweet, heavy smell of night-blooming flowers. The Jonicle drops anchor in a quiet bay, the sound of the heavy chain rattling through the water. Clank, clank, splash. The silence that follows is profound. Dinner on the deck is an affair of candlelight and soft music. The sky above is a vast, velvet expanse, filled with stars that seem close enough to touch. The flicker of the candles reflects in the dark water, dancing shadows that mimic the movement of the sea. Flicker, sway, flicker, sway. Diana laughs, her head tilted back, the Spencer pearls glowing against her sun-kissed skin. She looks happy. She looks like a woman who has finally found her way out of the mist. But there is a restlessness in her eyes, a sense that this peace is only temporary. Imagine the night air on the Mediterranean. It is cool, soft, and carries the rhythm of the tide. Diana stands alone on the stern of the boat, looking back at the lights of St. Tropez. The town looks like a cluster of diamonds dropped onto the coast. She feels the vibration of the yacht's generators beneath her feet, a steady, mechanical pulse. She is thinking of the autumn, of the work ahead, of the landmine campaign, of the boys going back to school. She doesn't know that she will never see the leaves turn in London. This summer in St. Tropez was the final act of her public life. It was a summer of intense visibility and deep, private reflection. She was a woman who had survived a palace, a divorce, and a decade of loneliness, and she was now soaking in the warmth of the sun as if to store it for the winter. The images of her in her leopard print swimsuit, her blue swimsuit, her white dress, they would become the final, haunting memories of a life lived in the light. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine that golden yacht on the dark blue sea. Hear the rhythmic lap of the waves against the wood, and the distant, soft sound of music drifting from the shore. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the cool, salt breeze in your hair. The world is beautiful, and the night is peaceful. But history is moving, a silent tide that is carrying our story toward the city of Paris, toward the shadows of the tunnel, and toward a legacy that will never end. The night in St. Tropez is deep now. The lights on the Jonicle are dimmed, and the sea has become a mirror for the moon. Diana closes her eyes, the sound of her own steady breathing the only music in her cabin. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. She is dreaming of the sun, of the water, and of a freedom that is finally within her reach. Sleep now, as the Mediterranean tide pulls away from the shore. The stars are watching over the yacht, and the woman who dared to live out loud. The journey is nearly at its end, but for tonight, let the water be calm. Let the sun linger in your mind. Let the silence be enough. The sun has set on the golden summer of Saint Tropez, and the story now moves into the heart of Paris. It is the night of August 30th, 1997. The air in the city is thick, warm, and heavy with the scent of dry stone and exhaust. We find ourselves at the Place Vendôme, standing before the grand, iron-wrought doors of the Hotel Ritz. Inside, the world of the street disappears. It is replaced by a landscape of absolute luxury, of red carpets that swallow the sound of footsteps, and gold-leafed mirrors that reflect a history of wealth and power. But for Diana, tonight, the Ritz is not a sanctuary. It is a golden cage. For the American listener, try to visualize the imperial suite. High ceilings adorned with intricate moldings, silk wallpaper that feels like cool skin, and furniture that is so grand it feels immovable. The air is still, smelling of expensive roses and wood wax. Diana is 36 years old, and she is exhausted. She sits on the edge of a velvet chair, her hands folded in her lap. The silence inside the room is profound, yet outside, just beyond the thick glass of the windows, a storm is raging. The sound of Paris at night is a low, constant roar. But tonight, that roar has a sharper edge. The paparazzi are gathered at the front entrance like a hunting pack, their motorcycles idling with a rhythmic, mechanical growl. Vroom, sputter, vroom. They are waiting for a glimpse, a single frame of film that they can sell to the highest bidder. Diana can hear them even through the heavy curtains. It is a sound she has lived with for 16 years, but tonight, it feels more predatory than ever before. Imagine the scene in the hotel's security office. The grainy, flickering images on the CCTV monitors. Diana and Dodi move through the hallways, their movements captured in a silent, rhythmic dance of frames. They look tired. They look like people who just want to be home. But home is a concept that is becoming increasingly difficult to define. Is it Kensington Palace? Is it a villa in the south of France? Or is it simply a place where the cameras cannot see? The dinner is served in the suite. The clink of silver against fine bone china is sharp in the quiet room. Clink, scrape, clink. Diana hardly eats. The tension in the air is a physical presence, sitting at the table with them like an uninvited guest. She looks at the gold-plated faucets in the bathroom, the silk sheets on the bed, the ornate clocks that tick with a steady, relentless precision. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second is a countdown, though she doesn't know to what. She walks to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain just an inch. The flashes of the cameras below are like silent lightning, illuminating the dark square in jagged, white bursts. Pop. Pop, pop. It is a visual heartbeat, a reminder that her privacy is a commodity that is being traded in real time. She feels the weight of the Ritz, its history, its opulence, pressing down on her. This is the golden cage in its final form. For the listener, try to feel that specific type of claustrophobia. The way luxury can feel like a burden when it is paired with a lack of freedom. The shadows in the corner of the imperial suite are long and dark, stretching across the carpet like fingers. Diana speaks to her sons on the phone, her voice soft, longing for the simple, boring reality of their lives back in England. The sound of the telephone line is a thin, electric hum, a connection to a world that feels thousands of miles away. The decision is made to leave. Not through the front doors, but through the back. A plan is hatched in the hushed, urgent tones of the security staff. A decoy car, a secret exit, a fast drive to Dodie's apartment. The atmosphere becomes frantic, a sharp contrast to the slow, rhythmic pace of the summer. The sound of footsteps in the hallway is faster now. Tap, 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 tap. The rustle of Diana's blazer, the jingle of car keys, the muffled sound of the elevator doors sliding shut. They move through the service entrance, a world of white tiles and fluorescent lights. The smell is different here, cleaning supplies and old grease. It is a jarring transition from the gold-leafed luxury of the suite. The black Mercedes is waiting in the shadows of the Rue Cambon. The engine is idling, a low, pulsing vibration that you can feel in the pavement. Hum, hum, hum. Diana gets into the back seat. She is tucked into the shadows, hidden from the light. The door shuts with a heavy, final thud. Clunk. Inside the car, it is quiet for a moment. The smell of leather and air conditioning. She looks out the tinted window at the stone walls of the Ritz. She is leaving the cage, but the cage is not letting go. As the car pulls away, the motorcycles of the paparazzi roar to life. The sound is a deafening, chaotic crescendo that shatters the silence of the Paris night. The chase is on. The car accelerates, the lights of the city becoming long, blurred streaks of white and yellow. Diana sits back in the seat, her heart beating in a fast, rhythmic thumping against her ribs. Tonight, as you settle into your own bed, try to feel the contrast of that final night. The immense, heavy luxury of the Ritz, and the sudden, frantic energy of the escape. Imagine the stillness of the Imperial Suite, left empty now, the candles still flickering in the draught, the bed unmade, the roses still fragrant in the dark. The golden cage remains, but the bird has flown into the night. The night in Paris is deep and beautiful, but it is also dangerous. The stars are hidden behind the city glow, and the moon is a pale sliver over the Seine. Diana is moving through the streets, a princess in the back of a black car, heading toward a tunnel that will change the world forever. For the listener, stay in this moment. Stay in the quiet of the car before the tunnel. Feel the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt, a steady, hypnotic humming. Hum, hum, hum. The story is reaching its climax, but for a few more seconds, let there be a sense of hope. Let the city be a blur of light. Let the night hold its breath. Sleep now, as the Ritz fades into the distance. The night is long, and the history is unfolding in the darkness of the Parisian streets. The journey is almost at its end, and the final, heartbreaking chapter is waiting just around the corner. The night has reached its darkest hour, and the city of Paris is a landscape of long shadows and amber street lamps. We are moving away from the gilded cage of the Ritz, away from the opulent silk and the heavy gold-leafed mirrors. We are traveling through the heart of the 8th arrondissement, toward the river Seine, where the water flows in a deep, dark, and silent rhythm beneath the bridges. This is the chapter of the Pont de l'Alma, a name that would soon become a chilling echo in the halls of history. For the American listener, try to visualize the speed of the night. Inside the black Mercedes, the world outside is a blur of stone buildings and blurred yellow lights. The sound of the engine is no longer a low hum, it is a high-pitched, urgent whine as the car races along the riverbank. Diana is in the back seat, her eyes reflecting the passing city. The paparazzi are a swarm of mechanical hornets behind them, their motorcycles screaming in the night air. Vroom, scream, vroom. The chase is a frantic, chaotic pulse that shatters the dignity of the night. Then, the car enters the tunnel. The transition from the open air to the concrete underpass is sudden and jarring. The sound changes instantly. The roar of the engines is magnified by the stone walls, bouncing back and forth in a deafening, rhythmic cacophony. And then, in a single, explosive second, the sound is cut short. A silence follows that is heavier than any silence we have encountered in our journey so far. It is not the peaceful silence of the woods at Althorp, or the sleepy silence of the nursery at Kensington. It is a cold, absolute, and final silence. The dust in the tunnel begins to settle in slow, dancing motes through the shafts of light. The only sound is the rhythmic ticking of a cooling engine, and the distant, muffled siren of a city that doesn't yet know what it has lost. Imagine the scene at the Pont de l'Alma in the moments after the crash. The air is thick with the smell of scorched rubber, gasoline, and the cool, damp breath of the Seine. The pillars of the tunnel stand like ancient, indifferent sentinels. The flashing lights of the emergency vehicles begin to arrive, casting jagged, blue pulses against the concrete walls. Flash, shadow, flash, shadow. It is a strobe light of tragedy, turning the scene into a series of frozen, heartbreaking images. Diana is still there, at the center of the wreckage. For the first time in 16 years, the cameras are still clicking, but she no longer hears them. She is drifting away, into a world where the titles and the scandals and the pressures of the crown can no longer reach her. The doctors move with a slow, practiced urgency, their voices low murmurs in the dark. They speak in French, a melodic, rhythmic language that flows like the river nearby. But the language of the night is now the language of the end. The news begins to travel across the Atlantic, reaching the American night. People wake to the sound of televisions and telephones, their hearts skipping a beat as they hear her name. The people's princess is no longer a living woman, she is becoming an eternal echo. The world is holding its breath, waiting for a miracle that the stars in the Parisian sky already know will not come. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere is one of profound, sterile quiet. The white light of the hallway, the smell of antiseptic, the soft squeak of medical shoes on the floor. Squeak, shuffle, squeak. Outside, the sun is beginning to rise over Paris, a pale, silver dawn that feels wrong in its beauty. The city is waking up, but the heart of the story has stopped beating. At 4 a.m., the silence becomes official. For the listener, try to feel the weight of that stillness. The way a room feels when a great light has been extinguished. The ripples of the Seine continue to hit the stone embankments, a steady, rhythmic, indifferent sound. Slap, retreat, slap. The river doesn't care about the princess, and the city continues to breathe, even as the world stops. The echoes of the Pont de l'Alma are not just the sounds of the crash. They are the echoes of a life that was lived too loudly and ended too soon. They are the echoes of the Queen of Hearts leaving her people. As the news spreads, the silence of the tunnel is replaced by the collective grief of a planet. A sea of flowers begins to grow outside the gates of Kensington Palace, a fragrant, floral carpet that smells of lilies and morning. Imagine the night in London as the body is brought home. The roar of the jet engines as the plane lands at Northolt, a low, mournful vibration in the air. The coffin is draped in the royal standard, a flash of color in the gray twilight. The rhythmic, heavy steps of the pallbearers as they carry her to the hearse. Thud, thud, thud. The world is watching through a veil of tears, their silence a tribute to the woman who spoke for them. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine the quiet of the Seine at night. Hear the water moving under the bridges, and the wind whispering through the trees of the Tuileries. The tunnel at Pont de l'Alma is just a place of stone and light now, but the echoes remain. They are the echoes of a woman who found her voice in the shadows and her strength in the light. The night in Paris is long, and the stars are watching over the river. The journey is moving toward the final, floral farewell, and the island of rest. But for now, let the city be quiet. Let the echoes fade into the darkness. Let the memory of the woman be enough to fill the silence. In the quiet of your own mind, see her one last time. Not in the back of a black car, but walking in the woods, or playing with her boys, or holding the hand of a stranger in a hospital ward. These are the true echoes of her life. The sounds of kindness, the rhythms of empathy, and the heartbeat of a woman who was truly, and forever, loved. Sleep now, as the morning mist rises over the Seine. The night is over, and the stars are fading into the light of the new day. The story is nearly finished, but the echo will live on, in every heart that remembers the princess who dared to be human. The world wakes up to a Sunday that feels shifted, as if the very air over London has become heavy and thick with a weight that cannot be named. The news has rippled across the Atlantic, through the American night and into the morning, turning a bright summer day into a period of frozen time. In London, the silence is no longer the quiet of a sleeping city. It is the silence of a collective intake of breath. The people's princess has returned to England, but she has returned in a coffin draped in the royal standard, and with her, she has brought a grief so vast, so deep, that it threatens to drown the very institution she once belonged to. For the American listener, try to visualize the gates of Kensington Palace in the days that follow. At first, it is just a few bouquets, a few single roses tucked into the iron bars. But soon, it becomes a sea. A literal ocean of flowers that stretches for hundreds of yards, spilling out across the grass of Hyde Park. Imagine the smell of 1,000,000 lilies, roses, and carnations, all wilting slowly in the humid September air. It is a sweet, cloying, overwhelming scent, the fragrance of a nation's broken heart. The sound of the crowds is a low, rhythmic, and constant murmur. Thousands of people are standing in line for hours, not to see a show, but to sign a book. There is a specific sound to a crowd in mourning. It is the sound of muffled footsteps on the pavement, the soft rustle of plastic flower wrappers, and the occasional, heartbreaking sound of a quiet sob. Snuffle, rustle, shuffle. The rhythm is steady, a slow-motion funeral march that never ends, day or night. Inside the palace, the atmosphere is one of profound, sterile shock. The royal family has retreated to Balmoral, to the same misty hills where the courtship once began. The distance between the Queen's silence in Scotland and the people's roar of grief in London is a chasm that grows wider with every passing hour. In London, the people are not just mourning a princess, they are mourning a woman they felt they knew. They are leaving letters, poems, and teddy bears, the items of childhood and love left in the dust of the street. Imagine the scene at night, when the city lights reflect off the cellophane of the flowers. The flickering of 10,000 morning candles creates a sea of dancing, orange flames. Flicker, sway, flicker, sway. The light is warm, but it doesn't chase away the coldness of the loss. The people stand in the dark, their faces illuminated by the candlelight, looking like figures in an ancient, religious ritual. They are the guardians of her memory now, and they refuse to leave her alone in the dark. The sound of the city's bells provides the only punctuation to the silence. Westminster Abbey, St. Paul's, the small parish churches, they all ring out in a slow, rhythmic, and mournful peal. Dong, dong, dong. The vibration of the bells can be felt in the very pavement beneath your feet. It is a sound that counts the seconds of a week that London will never forget. A week when the boring reality of daily life was suspended, and the only thing that mattered was the rose that was lost. For the listener, try to feel that stillness. The way a city feels when the flags are at half-mast, and the wind catches the fabric with a soft, snapping sound. Snap, flutter, snap. It is a sound of a world out of balance. Diana was the light of the monarchy, and now that the light is gone, the shadows feel longer, darker, and more imposing. The people are looking for a sign from the palace, but for now, there is only the rhythmic, heavy silence of the stone walls. In the middle of this grief, there are two young boys, William and Harry. Imagine them at Balmoral, walking through the heather, the same heather their mother once walked through. The sound of the wind in the pines is the only comfort they have. They are being shielded from the world, yet the world's grief is what they are walking through. The contrast between the private pain of a child and the public grief of a nation is a tragedy within a tragedy. The day of the funeral arrives, and London becomes a cathedral of silence. 1 million people line the route from Kensington to the Abbey, but there is no cheering. Only the rhythmic, haunting sound of the horses' hoofs on the road. Clip-clop, clip-clop. The gun carriage moves through the streets, the coffin topped with white lilies and a single envelope addressed to Mummy. The sound of that word, written in a child's hand, is louder than any bell. Imagine the walk of the 5 men behind the carriage. Philip, Charles, Earl Spencer, and the 2 boys. The sound of their boots on the asphalt is a steady, rhythmic, and agonizing thud. Thud, thud, thud. They are walking through a gauntlet of grief, their faces set in a mask of royal stoicism, while around them, the people are breaking. The American audience watches through their screens, thousands of miles away, yet they feel the vibration of those footsteps in their own homes. Inside Westminster Abbey, the air is cool and smells of ancient stone and incense. The music begins, candle in the wind, a melody that fills the soaring arches and the hearts of the billions watching. The sound of the choir, the soft rustle of the programs, the rhythmic ticking of the cameras as they document the final farewell. Click, 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 click. The world is saying goodbye to a woman who was never truly allowed to be just a woman. Tonight, as you settle into your own rest, imagine that sea of flowers outside the palace. Hear the wind whispering through the wilted petals, and the distant, muffled sound of the city starting to wake up from its week of mourning. The grief of a nation was a testament to the power of empathy. It showed that a woman who dared to be human could move the world in a way that no king or queen ever could. The night in London is deep now. The funeral is over, the crowds have begun to disperse, and the flowers are being gathered. But the scent of the lilies remains in the air, a lingering, floral echo of the woman who was the people's princess. The journey is moving toward the final, silent island, where the water is calm and the story ends. For the listener, stay in this moment of collective quiet. Feel the weight of the history that has just been made. The monarchy has changed, the world has changed, and the heart of the nation has a scar that will never fully disappear. But in the silence, there is also a sense of peace. She is no longer being chased. She is no longer being judged. She is finally, truly, at rest. Sleep now, as the bells of London finally go silent. The night is long, and the stars are watching over the empty gates of the palace. The journey continues to its final resting place, and the light is fading into a beautiful, eternal memory. The long, heavy, and floral-scented journey through the streets of London has come to an end. The roar of the crowds has faded into a distant, haunting memory, and the city's concrete has been replaced by the soft, rolling green hills of Northamptonshire. We have returned to Althorp, the same estate where a young girl once wandered the cold, portrait-lined corridors, and where a teenager once walked through the mist-covered woods with a prince. But today, the air is different. It is the air of a final homecoming. A stillness has settled over these 13,000 acres, a silence so deep and so ancient that it feels as if the land itself is holding its breath. For the American listener, imagine the landscape of the Spencer estate in the late afternoon. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, amber shadows across the parkland. The ancient oaks stand like silent, gnarled guardians of the family legacy, their leaves rustling in a gentle, rhythmic breeze. Rustle, sigh, rustle. This is the end of the road. But it is not a cold ending. It is a return to the earth, to the roots, and to the quiet sanctuary of childhood. At the heart of the estate lies the round oval, a peaceful, man-made lake that reflects the sky like a giant, silver mirror. The water is still, its surface disturbed only by the occasional, soft ripple of a water lily or the quiet, rhythmic dip of an oar. In the center of this lake sits an island. A small, wooded sanctuary known simply as the island. This is the chosen place. Away from the palaces, away from the cameras, and away from the crushing weight of public expectation. Here, Diana will find the one thing that eluded her in life: absolute, uninterruptible privacy. Imagine the sound of the final procession as it moves toward the water's edge. There are no cheering millions here. Only the rhythmic, heavy crunch of gravel beneath the feet of the pallbearers. Crunch, thud, crunch, thud. The sound is steady, grounding, and final. The birds in the trees have gone silent, as if they too understand the gravity of the moment. The only music is the soft, melancholic whistling of the wind through the reeds at the lake's edge. The coffin is carried across a temporary bridge to the island. Every step is a heartbeat. Every breath is a prayer. Diana is being returned to the care of her brother, the Earl Spencer, and to the ancestors whose portraits she once passed in the Great Gallery. She is no longer the Princess of Wales, she is the daughter of Althorp. As the coffin is lowered into the earth, the silence of the island becomes a living thing. It wraps around the mourners like a cold, heavy velvet blanket. For the listener, try to feel the stillness of that island. Imagine the scent of the damp earth, the smell of the dark, stagnant water, and the ancient, woody fragrance of the trees that have stood here for centuries. There is a specific peace in a place surrounded by water. It is a natural barrier, a moat of silence that keeps the chaos of the world at bay. The island is a fortress of memory, a place where the people's princess can finally let go of the role she played for so long. The days that follow the burial are quiet, rhythmic, and slow. The seasons begin their inevitable dance over the island. Autumn arrives, painting the trees in shades of copper, gold, and deep, bruised red. The leaves fall in a slow, swirling motion, covering the grave in a natural, temporary shroud. Swirl, land, swirl, land. The sound of the wind becomes sharper, carrying the scent of frost and wood smoke. Diana is at rest beneath the roots, becoming part of the land she once called home. Imagine the island in the middle of winter. The lake freezes over, a sheet of gray, opaque ice that locks the island in a cold, crystal embrace. The world is white and silent. The only sound is the cracking of the ice in the night, a sharp, rhythmic sound that echoes through the trees. Crack, snap, echo. Diana is safe in the dark, away from the flashbulbs and the headlines. The golden cage of the Ritz has been replaced by the silver cage of the winter frost. As spring returns, the island wakes up. The snow melts into the lake with a soft, rhythmic trickling sound. Drip, drop, drip, drop. The first snowdrops begin to push through the soil near the grave, tiny, white bells of hope in the shadows of the oaks. The ducks return to the water, their cries a low, rhythmic chattering in the reeds. Life is continuing, but the island remains a place of pause. A place where time doesn't move in the same way it does in the city. For the American audience, this island has become a place of pilgrimage in the mind. Even though we cannot visit it, we know it is there. We can see it in our mind's eye, the small, white memorial urn, the weeping willow trees dipping their branches into the water, the profound, heavy peace of the English countryside. It is a boring place, in the best sense of the word. It is a place where nothing happens, and that is exactly what she needed. Tonight, as you settle into your own sanctuary, imagine that island in the dark. Hear the water lapping gently against the stone edge, a slow, rhythmic, hypnotic sound. Slap, retreat, slap. Feel the cool, night air moving through the branches of the trees. Diana is there, in the heart of the Spencer estate, surrounded by the silence she finally earned. The story that began with a girl in the halls of Althorp has ended on an island at Althorp. The circle is complete. The night in Northamptonshire is deep and absolute. The stars are brilliant over the parkland, and the moon is a pale, silver disk reflected in the still water of the lake. The world is at rest. The history is written. The Queen of Hearts has found her throne on a small, wooded island, and no one can ever take it from her. For the listener, stay in this moment of eternal quiet. Feel the weight of the story lift from your heart. The struggles, the loneliness, the fame, and the tragedy are all gone now. Only the peace remains. The journey is over, but the light of the memory continues to shine in the dark. Sleep now, as the mist settles over the round oval. The night is long, and the stars are watching over the island. The story has reached its final, beautiful rest. And as the world sleeps, the princess sleeps with it, in the heart of the home she never truly left. The journey through the halls of Althorp, the mist of the Scottish Highlands, the golden cage of the Ritz, and the silent island in the lake, has brought us here. To the final horizon. It is the year 2026. And though nearly 3 decades have passed since the night in Paris, the image of the woman we call Diana has not faded. If anything, it has grown softer, clearer, and more enduring. This is the legacy of the rose. Not a legacy of stone monuments or political treaties, but a legacy of the heart, an eternal echo that continues to ripple through the fabric of our modern world. For the American listener, try to visualize a single white rose, frozen in time. It does not wither, it does not lose its fragrance, and it does not thorns. This is how the world remembers her. The people's princess has transitioned from a living, breathing woman into a permanent part of our collective consciousness. She is a symbol of a rare kind of courage, the courage to be vulnerable in a world that demands strength, and the courage to be human in an institution that demands perfection. Imagine the silence of the world as it reflects on her impact. The way her sons, William and Harry, carry her spirit in their own walks through the world. The way they hold the hands of the sick, the way they look into the eyes of the forgotten, the way they refuse to be silenced by the weight of tradition. The rhythmic beat of her heart continues to pulse through them. Thump, thump, thump. Every time they speak of mental health, every time they walk through a minefield, the rose blooms again. The legacy is a sensory experience that lives in the quiet moments of history. It is the scent of the lilies outside Kensington Palace that seems to return every September. It is the sight of a shy, tilted head in a grainy photograph that still has the power to stop us in our tracks. It is the sound of a voice, low and melodic, speaking of a desire to be a queen of people's hearts. That voice has not been silenced by the tunnel at Pont de l'Alma. It has become a steady, rhythmic, and comforting whisper in the ears of those who feel alone. For the listener, try to feel the weight of this endurance. Most names fade into the dry pages of history books, becoming nothing more than dates and titles. But Diana's name is a living thing. It is written in the hearts of the millions she touched, the people in the AIDS wards, the children in the orphanages, the victims of war who finally felt seen because she chose to look. Her legacy is a tapestry woven from millions of small, quiet acts of kindness. Thread by thread, she changed the way we understand empathy. Imagine a quiet museum gallery where her dresses are displayed behind glass. The silk and the velvet are still beautiful, the sequins still catch the light in a rhythmic, dancing flicker. Flicker, shimmer, flicker, shimmer. But the dresses are empty. They are just the shells of the woman who wore them. The true legacy isn't in the fashion or the fame. It is in the invisible light she left behind, a light that taught the monarchy that it must be human to survive, and taught the world that royalty is not about a crown, but about a connection. The world of 1981, with its glass coach and its fairy tale dreams, seems like a lifetime ago. The world has changed, becoming faster, louder, and more complex. Yet, in the middle of our modern chaos, the image of Diana remains a sanctuary of stillness. She is the boring part of our history that we return to for comfort. The girl in the kindergarten, the mother on the beach, the woman in the minefield. These are the anchors that hold us to the idea that one person can truly make a difference. Tonight, as you settle into the final moments of this 3-hour journey, imagine the world as a garden at night. The sun has long since set, and the moon is a pale, silver guardian in the sky. In the center of this garden is the rose. Its petals are soft and cool, holding the dew of 1,000 memories. The wind whispers through the leaves, a rhythmic, sighing sound that carries her name across the oceans. DNA. DNA. She is no longer being chased by the motorcycles. She is no longer hiding from the ghost of Highgrove. She is no longer a prisoner of the Ritz. She is free. She belongs to everyone, and she belongs to no one. She is the silence of the island at Althorp, the warmth of the sun in St. Tropez, and the steady, peaceful rhythm of a heart that finally found its rest. For the American audience, she was the bridge between our world and the ancient world of kings and queens. She made the inaccessible feel close. She made the cold feel warm. And in her passing, she left us with a responsibility to keep the rose alive, to continue the work of empathy, to remember that beneath the titles and the tiaras, we are all just humans, searching for a place to belong. The night is now absolute. The 3 hours have passed like a slow, rhythmic tide, pulling you deeper and deeper into the quiet spaces of history. The lights of the palaces have all gone dark. The bells of the cathedrals have finished their peal. The city of London is a sea of sleeping dreams. And out in the countryside, at Althorp, the lake is a mirror of perfect, silver silence. Diana is there, at peace. Her legacy is not a tragedy, it is a triumph of the spirit. It is a rose that grew in the cracks of a stone institution and eventually covered the world in its beauty. The people's princess is home. As you drift into the final embrace of sleep, let the sound of my voice be the last thing you hear. A soft, rhythmic, and steady presence. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The story is complete. The circle is closed. The memory is eternal. Sleep now, as the legacy of the rose wraps around you like a soft, silk veil. The night is yours, and the silence is beautiful. The journey is over, and the peace is final. Sweet dreams, in the quiet halls of history. Good night.